Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. This is story about what if Naruto befriended Hinata early part 1. Before I start, please do support for more amazing content and comments for part 2. Do consider to subscribe my channel and share my video to your friends and check out the description as well. Let's start the video. He was falling, he was cold, and he was tired. So tired. How long had he been fighting for? It seemed like all his life. He just wanted peace, some semblance of real tranquility. She had given it to him, or at least had attempted to. Why had it taken him so long to notice? It was too late now. Naruto was falling. How long had it been now? The blonde wasn't sure anymore. His chakra had been ripped from his body and used against him, that was why, right? The young man felt cold as the air whipped against him in his descent. It was the middle of winter, wasn't it? The war hero was tired, his body felt like lead. He wouldn't be able to rescue her now. Did she even want to be rescued anymore? She had gone willingly after all, hadn't she? Did it even matter now? But if that was true, why had she been crying? I didn't want to see her cry. I never did like to see her cry. Kid, are you giving up? The blonde wearily opened his deep blue eyes, taking in his new surroundings as they changed. He'd been summoned to his mindscape, gaining a temporary escape from the realities of the current situation. Instead of falling, he was now standing and staring at a serene blend of obscure colored mist. He turned around to stare before him at a rather dejected mountain of rust-red fur. The embodiment of pure chakra that sat looming over him glared with eyes the color of blood, slit pupils judging him apprehensively. The young shinobi's body language said it all. But the QB wanted to hear it for himself. I'm sorry, Kurama, I have nothing left. What do you mean? I can probably muster up more chakra before you hit the ground. I have nothing left. My clan was wiped out before I was even a thought. My parents died before I was even an hour old. Ji-chan died before I even hit puberty. Ero-senin died before I became a man. Hell, he'd probably be disappointed to know that I'm about to die before I could really become a man. Naruto paused and thought about it for a second, then grabbed his face and leaned forward, groaning in disappointment and shock. Oh Kami. I'm going to die in a shitty way, and as a virgin. Dadabayo. This got a smug chuckle out of the old fox before the depressed blonde continued with his monologue. Sasuke, never really came back. The Sasuke that I got back wasn't the one that left. Hell, even the one that came back left as soon as Kakashi-sensei let him. Tabayo. I spent so much time and effort chasing him, trying to bring him back to the village. The Sasuke I knew ended up only being a ghost. And I was alone again in the end. Mumbling the last part sourly, the young man plopped down with a sigh, disheartened at the admittance as he rested his arms over his knees. Naruto looked completely dejected and defeated at this realization. Was he ever really there to begin with? This retort earned the Biju a sharp look as Naruto glared up challengingly at the red-furred monster from where he sat in a more defiant posture. Kurama bared his teeth, leering down in return, and after a pause, Naruto's features softened, sadly returning his gaze downward towards his hands resting on his lap. No matter how much he hurt me, he was still my brother Tabayo, even if he ended up the way he did. Both embodiments of sentience sat in silence for a time, reflecting on their shared experiences. Around them played scenes from Naruto's past. Always struggling, always training, always fighting, always hurting, and what did he have to show for it? He thought being acknowledged would cure his loneliness, alleviate some of the pain, but becoming the infamous war hero just made him feel even more isolated. No one saw him for him anymore. Those that did know him personally never seemed to have time for him now. No one except. I regret not approaching her sooner, and maybe if I had, things wouldn't have turned out this way. It's my fault. Naruto smiled darkly as he bawled in on himself, tears burning the edges of his vision as his body flooded with regret and guilt. Maybe this is my divine punishment. I mean, I made her suffer for years. If that genjutsu was an accurate display of her memories, that means she's at the very least like me for over a decade. Hell, that means she acknowledged me before even Iruka-sensei did. And how did I repay her? By being a big idiot, Dadabayo. I even flirted with Sakura in front of her, even after she told me that she loved me and almost died for me, twice. I couldn't even bring myself to approach her after Niji. How cruel can I be? I'm nothing but a stupid coward, Dadabayo. He chuckled, his tone filled with mirth. Kit, you weren't exactly the most socialized human, and you were dealing with your own problems. I'm pretty sure she understood that. That doesn't change the fact that I hurt her, and have been hurting her for years. Tabayo. If I had the chance, I'd go back and make it up to her. Maybe then things would have turned out differently. Do you think when I reincarnate next time, Old Man Six Paths can set something up? I wouldn't even mind if I became her pet rabbit or something, Dadabayo. Naruto pleaded morbidly, resigned to his fate, but with a small flicker of hope. Kurama was stunned by the boy's complete abdication. Naruto was really giving up. Had the boy finally reached his breaking point? Giving the broken man a remorseful look before quickly recovering, the monstrous vulpine-like creature shrugged, playfully giving the blonde an arrogant smirk. Kurama in fact was gathering chakra to save the idiot. Throughout their conversation, the 19-year-old's body had still been plummeting to the earth, and Kurama wanted to distract him from the pain and anxiety of the situation. Out of all the humans the QB had met over the years, this one deserved more. He was treated no better than any Biju. The humans always used Naruto as a tool, a weapon, and ignored his wants and needs when the crisis was over. Who had been there for him when he was a weak kid going to bed hungry at night? Who held him after the war when he struggled with nightmares for months? Kurama knew Naruto well. Even if the boy could hide his feelings and thoughts from everyone else, it was hard to shield those emotions from someone living in your head. The QB saw and felt it all as if it were his own personal experiences, every betrayal, every infliction of pain, physical or not. No, this boy deserved more, and Kurama would make sure Naruto achieved some happiness in his life if he could help it. Grinning with cunning that only an ancient nine-tailed fox could muster, he turned his chakra pools inward. Sure, Kit, I can try to talk to him about setting something up. Kurama, will it hurt? Not any more than when Mandara ripped me from your body. I'll make sure of it. Thank you, Kurama, and again I'm sorry. With his last words to the fox, Naruto directed his consciousness outwards. Opening his eyes to the real world, the defeated blonde was once again aware of the sting of the cold wind on his cheeks as he tumbled through the winter air. Naruto's tan skin was burning from the chill as his body gained momentum. Despondent blue eyes drifted upwards to gaze at the false sky of this strange land his team had been drawn to during their mission. He could still clearly see the hole his chakra has pierced through the miniaturized moon that glowed in the night sky. It reminded him of her, and those eyes her clan was famous for. Naruto lifted his hand. Still firmly grasped in his firm grip was a charred piece of scarlet that had been carefully knitted throughout their journey. He had seen her working on it as he watched her every night. All that work, carelessly obliterated in an instant. Naruto chuckled at the irony, since his own will and dreams had been destroyed just as easily. Bringing the small bit of comfort closer to his chest, Naruto tried to get his breathing under control as the ground drifted closer. The Jinchuriki now fought against his primal instincts that screamed for him to save himself. He had to remind himself that Kurama had assured him it wouldn't hurt. It'd be over in an instant. Would they be able to find his body? How would they feel after he was gone? Would they succeed in their mission without him? It didn't really matter anymore now, did it? Taking one last deep breath to steel his resolve, Naruto looked back up to the moon. It really did remind him of her eyes, those gorgeous pools of pearlescent lilac, usually hidden behind indigo as dark as the night sky. With that last thought, there was nothing, and then there was pain everywhere. Groaning, a young child slowly opened their bruised, but shining cerulean blue eyes. The first thing the battered boy noticed was the pain encompassing his small frame, then he saw that it was snowing. Looking around, sky blue orbs locked onto large pools of milky lilac staring down at him. Tears brimming the ethereal gaze, threatening to fall along a delicately round pale face, framed by indigo. What was all the young Naruto could muster? He didn't know if it was because his body was in so much pain, the dizzy falling sensation he was currently struggling against, or those large eyes that kept him pinned to the ground. After another moment of fighting to gain his bearings, a bleary-eyed Naruto slowly sat up. I'm sorry. A voice whimpered barely above a whisper. Naruto turned to focus on the voice. Returning to gaze at the pretty eyes before the pearlescent pools snapped shut as something scarlet was thrust under Naruto's nose. Why your scarf? They ruined it. As more of Naruto's surroundings came into focus, he saw a girl no older than himself kneeling in front of him. Displayed in her hands were the remains of a scarf torn to shreds. A sudden tidal wave of emotions washed over the young boy. It felt like someone had punched him in the gut all over again. What was this feeling? It was overwhelming, disorienting, familiar yet foreign. Are you okay? The girl asked in concern, lowering the object to look at him with worry filling her large pupilless eyes. She seemed scared, or distressed, not of him, but for him? This was a strange feeling that was developing in his gut right now. Naruto wasn't sure what to make of it, but he didn't want the girl to look so sad and scared. Even though it seemed every part of his body was sore and stiff, Naruto managed to brush the snow off of himself, making an effort to smile at her reassuringly. I'm okay. I'm used to it. How about you? Tebeo, are you okay? He observed her more intently as the current situation came flooding back to him. The girl had been being bullied by some older kids when he tried to intervene. Then said jerks had knocked him out? Naruto's large blue eyes carefully inspected the nervous girl, trying to notice if those mean older kids did anything to her besides saying harsh words to make her cry. He didn't want to see her cry either, but it would be better than seeing her hurt. I am okay, here's your scarf? The girl tried again to give him the remnants of scarlet yarn. Naruto smiled again, shaking his head and waving his hand dismissively. The article of clothing had been destroyed, what use did he have for it now? The girl was nice, but her logic was weird. That's okay, you can keep it. Tebeo. We should probably head home anyway, it's kinda cold out here. To prove his point, the 7-year-old started to shiver, rubbing his arms vigorously at the realization that he was freezing. His hands were pink and numb, as were his face and ears. How long was I out for? Has she really sat in the snow this whole time waiting for me to wake up? Why would she do that? Isn't she cold? What a strange girl. The girl stared at him for a long moment, seeming to be unsure about something before she tucked the remnants of yarn into her pocket and nodded in agreement. With that, the duo went their separate ways. Naruto wouldn't let his weakness show, but in reality, he was cold, hurt everywhere, and felt kind of sick. Not quite as sick as when he drank spoiled milk on accident, but an unfamiliar unsettling feeling deep in his gut. It didn't take long for Naruto to make it to his apartment. Upon entering, the young boy shouted a less than enthusiastic "Tadaima," being answered back with a familiar silence. The orphan was quick to kick off his shoes at the Genkin, hurrying to the bathroom to start his bathwater. While waiting for the bath to fill, Naruto decided to strip out of his wet clothes and eat a quick cup of ramen. The bath warmed him up considerably and helped reduce the remaining soreness he had been feeling. Sometime later, Naruto decided to get ready for bed. Sleep claimed the worn-out child quickly, and from his subconscious, a large figure obscured by shadow watched as his dreams danced around through his mindscape. Rest easy, kid, you've earned it. The next morning, Naruto got ready for school. He'd been in the academy since the start of spring. So far, the experience was less than what he had hoped for. What does being a ninja have to do with books and homework? Not to mention the other kids weren't as friendly as he hoped. They were just as bad as adults. He wouldn't give up on trying to make friends just yet, though. Maybe they'd been in a better mood since the Rinne festival ended recently? The villagers always seemed to be happier around that time of year, though he didn't understand why. Once Naruto left his apartment, he was quick to head off, only to abruptly skid to a stop, slipping in the snow and almost falling as he made it to the main road. What was this feeling in the air? It was suffocating, it made him feel sick, and all the hair on his body seemed to stand on end. The blond child raised his hand to grasp his jacket uncomfortably. It was becoming hard to breathe. Hesitantly, Naruto started forward again, cautiously trying to figure out what this feeling was. He didn't feel like he was in danger, but his body was humming. Looking around, he flinched, catching some of the cold glances he'd been noticing more frequently. Was that where the feeling was coming from? Be strong, a shinobi endures after all. Naruto quickly looked around, unsure if he heard that out loud. It didn't seem like it. Either way, it was good advice. He was after all training to become a great shinobi, maybe even Hokage someday. Nodding in determination, the reassured boy put on his biggest smile and continued on his way. Naruto couldn't let these people intimidate him, especially if one day he was expected to protect them. Even if they hated him now, eventually that would change. Naruto was relieved once he got to class. The heavy feeling wasn't as thick in the air here. The cheerful boy looked around for a free spot with his large blue eyes. Today, the young Uzumaki noticed something strange. Every time he would focus on one of his classmates, he'd get a different range of funny feelings that had become stronger the closer he got to the individual. Naruto didn't like a lot of the sensations he was feeling, even if they weren't as overwhelming as the ones given off by the adults earlier. That was until his gaze landed on a familiar indigo-haired girl. She was sitting in one of the higher-up rows towards the back of the classroom, wearing the same berry violet coat she wore the previous day. Just gazing at her gave Naruto a strange heavy feeling, but it didn't seem directed at him like when he was looking at the other students. Humming to himself in thought, the young boy decided to investigate, and walked carefully up the steps to look down at her. The girl seemed distracted, her head turned towards the window. Naruto smiled mischievously, careful to stay quiet as he closed the distance. Patiently, the intrigued boy stood hovering next to her, waiting curiously to see if she'd notice his presence. After a brief period, the girl sighed, turning back to facing forward, flinching when she finally realized the boy was standing next to her. Naruto's smile faltered for a second. Was she like the others? Was she going to ignore him too? However, his thoughts were shaken up by a sudden warm feeling permeating from the girl, erasing the heavy feeling he had been emitted from her before. The withdrawn girl still wasn't looking at him, however, her eyes directed downwards as she shifted uncomfortably. But Naruto didn't mind. All he could think was, this feels nice. With that in mind, the young blonde nodded to himself, coming to a decision. He plopped down in the free seat next to the timid girl, basking in the unfamiliar warmth she exuded. This earned him a surprised squeak from the hesitant girl. Naruto waited in comfortable silence, giving the girl a couple of sidelong glances to gauge her tolerance of his presence before mustering up his biggest smile, turning to face her while leaning against the desk, resting his whisker-striped cheek in his palm. I didn't know we had class together. I'm Uzumaki Naruto. What's your name, Databeo? Hinata? Hyuga Hinata, the girl murmured after a long pause, still avoiding eye contact with the boy. Naruto nodded in recognition, chuckling in restrained giddiness. She didn't ignore me. Someone's actually talking to me without getting mad. Leaning back in his seat, Naruto interlaced his hands behind his head and looked up at the ceiling. The nervous boy was trying to give off a look of boredom and apathy when in reality he was feeling the complete opposite. Hesitant to press, he weighed his options before deciding to press his luck. Do you mind if I sit here today, Hinata-chan? He finally asked quietly, giving her a sidelong glance to ascertain her reaction. The girl stiffened for a second, giving him a whirlwind of different sensations. Warmth, tingling, heaviness, the sensations pushed against his chest and stomach in alternating waves, making him feel dizzy. There were too many changing feelings at once, making it hard for Naruto to concentrate. No, I don't mind, and Naruto Keikun, the girl who was now known as Hinata, finally replied, looking up as she began pushing her index fingers together in a nervous manner, her eyes darting towards him for a second before she quickly looked away. Naruto blinked in confusion for a second, unable to fully trust his ears. instead becoming distracted by a faint rosiness dusting her cheeks. Silently he hoped that she wasn't coming down with something. He felt guilty since she had stayed out so long in the snow yesterday because of him. Yep, Naruto definitely needed to sit here today and keep an eye out for her in case he needed to notify Sensei of her condition. Hinata had after all told him she didn't mind sharing seats with him. Suddenly a disturbance at the front of the class drew both of the children's attention. A dark-haired boy dressed in blue flocked by a group of girls made his way into the class. The sight of the said boy immediately gave Naruto a twisted feeling in his stomach and a burning in his chest. Inwardly the blonde swore, but he wanted to give the girl a good impression of himself, so outwardly Naruto reserved himself to just glaring at the newcomer. The socially inept orphan found that some people didn't like when he said those kinds of words out loud. Naruto once had a crazy old lady practically force-feed him soap of all things for it on one occasion, after tanning his hide. Just remembering the memory made him shudder. Naruto hadn't been able to sit properly the rest of the day, and all his ramen had tasted awful. It had been a very dark day in his young life indeed. Uchiha Sasuke, for all the disinterest and hostility Naruto experienced, seemed to be blessed with the complete opposite, and worse, didn't even appreciate it. Since the start of the school year, Naruto had tried to beat him in all the practical evaluations, and was upshowed by the stuck-up Uchiha every time. Slowly the orange-clad Uzumaki lowered his hands, reaching into his pockets that had been slowly dampened in the warm classroom, his mouth twisting into a mischievous grin. Today I'll put you in your place. Everyone will see you're not so special. In the blink of an eye, Naruto had leaped on top of his desk, throwing 2 partially melted snowballs into the direction of his ire. I have him this time. There was no way team would have expected. Naruto's thoughts were cut short, first by disappointment, because of course Sasuke would dodge, and then quickly replaced by horror as the pink-haired girl behind the raven-haired boy had not been as fortunate. Shishimata. Naruto spent the first half-hour of class nursing wounds received from inciting the wrath of one irate Hiruno Sakura. Something Naruto hoped to not repeat anytime soon. Normally he'd be tripping over himself to try and get on the girl's good side, but now the terrified boy just shuddered, feeling a chill go down his spine at the idea. Somehow Naruto just knew it wasn't a good idea and would lead to more pain in the future. After morning instruction, Naruto followed the rest of the class outside as their instructor had stated they were going to be going through kata drills and some light spars. Supposedly it'd warm them up before they'd be released in the afternoon. The Uzumaki boy didn't understand how that'd work since it was cold outside and they'd be exercising outside, but he was looking forward to trying to wipe the smirk off of Team S's face. Maybe if he beat the popular jerk, the other students would acknowledge his awesomeness. So far Naruto had at least found one person who tolerated his presence, which gave him hope. With that train of thought, Naruto stole a glance at the shy girl while they made their way to the school training field. He had worried that Hinata would be mad at him when he accidentally hit Sakura with his snowball assault meant for team, but surprisingly she wasn't. In fact, Hinata had that same strange look on her face that she had the previous day when he got beat up by those bullies. Naruto didn't know exactly how he felt about that, but a small part of him felt hopeful. He'd have to see where things went. All he knew, for now, was that as long as Hinata kept being nice to him, she'd definitely stay off of his list of prank victims for the foreseeable future. It wasn't long before the class moved from their kata exercises to being split up into teams for spars. Naruto was getting excited as he waited his turn. It was interesting to watch the other matches. The blue-eyed boy couldn't tell if he was starting to finally retain the information from class, but it felt weird that he was starting to recognize the mistakes his peers were making before Sensei even said anything, and the instructions were starting to make sense. Uchiha Sasuke and Uzumaki Naruto, you're up. And remember to behave this time. The teacher called from where he was writing on his clipboard. Naruto grinned confidently as he approached the practice ring, making the seal of confrontation they were taught to signify the start of the match. It was annoying listening to the others cheering for team. Why couldn't they cheer for him for once? What made the Uchiha so cool? Naruto didn't see anything special about the clan, or specifically about the boy currently glaring at him. As soon as the signal was given, Naruto launched into his assault. Normally he would have just launched forward with a haphazard punch, but for some reason, his body moved on its own and he swung into a butterfly kick instead. This caught everyone off guard since that wasn't something they'd been taught in the academy. Sasuke saved himself by stumbling back, falling into the snow. Naruto was so surprised himself he failed the landing, losing his balance and falling face first onto the cold, wet ground. Groaning, Naruto pulled himself up into a kneeling position, wiping the frigid moisture from his face. What the heck was that? He thought, perplexed by his reflexes. Hearing someone approach, Naruto looked up to see his most recent instructor appearing just as bewildered as he felt. This was Umino Irika, a young man who could barely be considered an adult. He had become the class's newest teacher after Naruto chased off the other two the previous semesters. So far the scar-faced brunette seemed to be a master at ignoring Naruto's antics, at least until today, and he hadn't even done it on purpose. Naruto, please try to keep the advanced moves for when you're a bit older. I don't need yourself or each other trying to do things you're not ready for. The Chunin admonished, earning a chorus of stifled giggles from the rest of the class. Naruto looked down, his face burning with embarrassment. Soon the boys restarted their match that quickly ended as it normally would have. Though Naruto was suspicious that his earlier surprise got under Sasuke's skin because it certainly didn't feel like he had pulled his punches. While Naruto sat on the ground nursing his bruises, Sasuke scoffed as he hovered over him haughtily. "You're 100 years too early if you think you can beat me, Uzuratanki." He scoffed before returning to the sidelines. Normally this remark would have spurred Naruto into a tantrum, but for some reason, it didn't bother him as much today. He still glowered at the taller boy before getting up to make his way back over to the sidelines, purposefully plopping down on the opposite side of the training area from the other boy. Naruto didn't feel like dealing with any more insults delivered from the loud following that seemed to swarm the Uchiha, or the arrogant show-off himself. Now that Naruto thought about it, why had it seemed just the other day so important to have all that? Yeah, sure, it would be nice if the other kids were willing to play with him, or just do anything besides glare and mutter under their breath about him, but did he actually want to act like that guy? Naruto wanted people to like him for himself. It wouldn't do to emulate such a jerk. The Uzumaki was brought out of his musing by the appearance of a shadow and being washed over by that still new but refreshingly warm feeling. "Ayanu, are you okay and Naruto-kun?" "Sasuke-san seemed a bit hard on UT today," came a small but sweet voice. Looking up, Naruto was once again lost in pools of milky lavender framed by indigo. Suddenly all the thoughts that had been weighing him down evaporated, and he felt washed over entirely by that sensation of warmth. His earlier embarrassment and humiliation didn't seem so important now. The team being a smug bastard seemed so insignificant compared to this. Someone was actually concerned about him. Someone was actually talking to him, and didn't have that look in their eyes. "Thanks, Hinata-chan, I'm fine now." "Databeo," he answered, beaming his best smile. Well, at least the best he could manage under his current condition. It wasn't long before the students returned to class to discuss their assignments that were due later in the week, and training they were expected to practice at home. As soon as Iruka-sensei dismissed the class, Naruto was quick to turn to the shy girl that had been such a soothing balm for the otherwise bad day. "Hey, Hinata-chan," to the blonde blushed, unsure of himself again. Naruto wasn't one to act shy normally, but this felt important, and he was afraid of it backfiring on him as other interactions had in the past with other students. "Why yes, and Naruto-kun?" Hinata asked, turning to him, tilting her head, giving him her full attention. Taking a breath to try calming his nerves, Naruto fidgeted, shifting his large sky-blue eyes as uncertainty overwhelmed him. "Do you mind if I sit next to you tomorrow? Sasuke might still be mad at me. Not that I'm afraid of him." "Tabeo." Naruto continued to stumble over his words as the girl studied him carefully. Hinata seemed to be looking for something intently before she slowly gave him a small smile and nodded shyly. Her affirmation stunned Naruto, but he was quick to recover, flashing one of his large smiles again. "Great. See you tomorrow, Hinata-chan." With that he was quick to run out of the classroom, and so began Naruto's new routine. Every day that class was in session he'd sit next to Hinata, at least on the days he chose to participate. Even though her presence was comforting, the lonely boy still found the uncomfortable heaviness that was thick in the air unbearable at times. It didn't help that for the most part he was ignored by everyone else, especially his teacher. Even when Naruto played pranks, got loud, or tried to generally bring attention to himself, Iruka-sensei would just act as if nothing happened. Sure, the Scarface sourpuss reprimanded him when he almost decked Sasuke that one time, but it hadn't been worth the thrashing he received in return from the popular boy. Naruto even caught Iruka-sensei giving him that look on occasion when he thought Naruto wasn't looking. However, the attention-starved youth did notice that sometimes when acting up there'd be a flicker of something else, or a feeling similar to what he sensed radiating from Hinata. At least before the sensation was replaced with that all-too-familiar feeling the rest of the villagers seemed to put off. Granted, it wasn't as intense as what other adults seemed to emanate. After school still sucked, besides the monthly visits from Hokage Ji-chan to give him his allowance, or his infrequent meals from Ichiraku's, Naruto didn't have anything else to occupy his time before he was expected to return to that dreaded apartment at night. Fortunately, with the weather becoming more tolerable, Naruto could go train in the woods surrounding the village. However, the nice weather and budding trees also brought him a sense of anxiety. Running through the woods throwing rocks at his designated targets with practiced ease, Naruto's mind wandered to the source of this new feeling of agitation. The coming of spring meant that soon his first year at the academy would be over, and that meant everyone was going to go on break for a month. That meant all the kids from clans were going to get specialized training from their families, and Naruto would be alone, again. Gritting his teeth as the familiar twisting feeling burned in his chest, Naruto pushed himself to train harder, weaving through the thick underbrush. He couldn't fall behind, he needed to use this time to train twice as hard, no 10 times as hard. That way he could show everyone how awesome he had become at the end of the month. Then they would have to acknowledge him. A sudden snap of a twig caught Naruto's attention, causing him to stop and quickly turn around, seeing nothing. Perplexed, the breathless boy tilted his head in confusion, focusing on the bushes, wary of a wild animal while trying to regain his breath. Naruto didn't want to get chased by a wild boar again. He was already worn out from training for the past few hours. A sudden tidal wave of suffocating heaviness froze Naruto in his tracks. The sun-kissed Uzumaki had never felt anything this intense before. The boy's small body trembled uncontrollably, registering instinctually with dread even if he didn't know the cause. His body understood. He was in danger. From the treetops overlooking the petrified youth lurked a figure cloaked in shadow. The foolish monster was alone for once. Had it given the ANBU the slip once again? It didn't matter, life rarely gave you opportunities. Gripping the kunai in their hand, the silent assassin mustered up their nerve and pounced with the grace of a cat, eyes locked on its unsuspecting prey. It'd be over in a moment. The bane of the village would perish today. In a flash of brilliance that shimmered between fiery gold and illustrious orange, the assailant's descent was cut short. The last image to pass through the would-be assassin's mind was the young boy slowly turning his head up to look up, eyes a deep scarlet, pupils morphed into sharp slits, his small body covered in a strange aura reminiscent of flames as bright as sunshine. In the next instant, the predator became the prey, their body torn apart mercilessly. As the aura died down, another presence approached, albeit more hesitantly. Naruto didn't even look away from his handiwork as he felt the person approaching, not feeling in the least threatened by the newcomer. Kakashi, or I guess you're going by Inu right now. Keep a better watch over the brat. You wouldn't want something to happen to your precious sensei's legacy after all. Naruto spoke with a voice much too deep, guttural, and mature to belong to a 7-year-old boy. His eyes were wide, still blazing scarlet, as he glared at the man wearing the kabuki mask signifying his place in Konoha's Spec Ops ANBU force. If the man was surprised, he made no move to signify as such. Don't worry, he's not aware, nor will he remember this mess. The possessed boy emphasized his point, waving his small hand to signify his blood-splattered clothes and the remnants of the body scattered around the clearing. After a pause, Naruto slowly lifted his shirt, exposing his tattooed flesh to the adult who was watching him suspiciously. And as you can see, the seal is still perfectly intact. I'm rather fond of this vessel and will not see him damaged anytime soon. As long as Naruto feels an attachment to this village, I will act according to his will, even if he doesn't remember. Now if you don't mind, I have a brat that needs to be cleaned up, and you have a report to give your Hokage, I presume? Naruto smiled toothily before turning to leave. He hesitated for a moment, stopping to let out a long-drawn-out sigh, speaking without facing the masked man. You know, you could make an effort to give him more of your presence outside of the mask. You're not the only one suffering alone because of that night. With that, the QB-possessed Naruto quickly disappeared. The man called Kakashi never once made a move to stop him nor pursue him. Kurama was aware that said shinobi could track Naruto down at any point using his canine summons, so he wasn't concerned about when the boy's body would inevitably give out from the stress of his chakra surging through Naruto's underdeveloped system. Kakashi, for his part, didn't know what to think about the current situation. It had been a routine assignment of watching Naruto from the shadows. Unfortunately, at some point, he'd lost track of his young charge. It seemed that was all it took for some fool to take advantage of the situation. Digging through the carnage for any form of identification, the young ANBU soon realized the poor bastard had been some Chunin whose team was meant to be guarding a nearby checkpoint. Why was the man so far from his post? Did he know Naruto trained in this area frequently? Had he been planning this attack for a while? What would have happened if the QB hadn't decided to protect Naruto? Standing back up, Kakashi contemplated his options. There were too many unknowns, and questions left unanswered. What was the best way to handle this situation? On one hand, the QB seemed to be able to easily take over and possess Naruto, to the point of effectively turning a trained shinobi into nothing more than dog food. On the other hand, Naruto's seal was still intact, and it seemed the QB had become attached to his young Jinchuriki, to the point of even stating he'd support Konohagakure if that was Naruto's wish. Well, after chastising Kakashi for slipping up with his sworn duty. Actually, how did the fox know his name? Looking around at the remnants of one of his compatriots, Kakashi weighed his options once more. How would the Hokage take the news? Would he even believe Kakashi's account? Would this put Naruto in even more danger? The young ANBU was torn between his duty to the village and his fallen sensei. At last, Kakashi came to a decision, leaping off in the direction of the outpost. After all, it wasn't unusual for a ninja to meet their end because of a dangerous animal. His teammates just needed to be convinced, well, after Kakashi made sure they weren't complicit. The young shinobi's left eye glowed threateningly at the thought. If that had been the case, well, Konoha wouldn't miss one low-ranking team. The forests were full of wild animals after all. It was late evening when Naruto stirred. What happened? Groaning, he sat up and noticed his clothes were soaked while also covered in mud and foliage. The young boy was confused, sore, and too tired to really care about much else. Maybe he ate poisonous mushrooms again? Everything seemed fuzzy, and his memory was coming up blank. Hokage Jichan has warned him to be careful when foraging in the forest. Naruto's thoughts were cut short by a familiar presence making itself known. Looking up, disoriented youth noticed a tall, lanky ANBU that had shadowed him most of his young life. Well, one of them anyway. Inu was usually pretty lax compared to some of the other ANBU the Uzumaki had to deal with. Inu never spoke to him, of course, but he never gave him that heavy feeling either. Instead, the ANBU gave off a more complex feeling Naruto couldn't place. It was like a mix of what he felt when he'd returned to his apartment every night, but also how he felt greeting Hinata every day at school. It was a very disorienting sensation for sure. Ainu-san? What are you doing out here? The young boy stammered, rubbing sleep from his eyes, inadvertently smearing mud down his cheek. The strange man's answer was to tap Naruto's chest and then point towards the horizon. Bring to boy's attention the time of day. Yeah, I know it's getting late. Hokage Ji-chan's probably mad that I'm not back in the village again, huh? He sure has gotten more strict since I started going to the academy. Databeo, the boy grumbled before sneezing. This was followed by a shiver, as the evening breeze licked his skin. The ANBU tilted his head, studying Naruto carefully for a long moment before he knelt, motioning for the dirty child to climb up onto his back. Naruto shifted uncomfortably, feeling a mixture of guilt and embarrassment. His tune quickly changed as he was assaulted by another chilly gust of early spring air. Awkwardly, Naruto scrambled onto the masked man's back. The lonely orphan wasn't used to being this close to anyone. It was so rare that Naruto found himself savoring the moment. As Inu-san leapt from tree to tree back towards the illuminating light of the village, Naruto sleepily nuzzled into his back. Is this what it would have felt like to have an older brother maybe? Inu-san smells like puppies. With that last thought of irony, Naruto drifted back to sleep. His dreams were filled with visions of a kind yet sad smile hidden behind a mask, dogs, and warmth. Naruto fidgeted uncomfortably from where he sat on his swing, watching the assembled students that were waiting excitedly that morning for the new school year to begin. Over the past month, they had been on break. During this time, the young boy had trained tirelessly in fear of falling behind. Naruto glanced up, feeling a swell of jealousy and longing eating at every fiber of his being from the display before him. The sight of the children interacting with their parents and guardians was torture for the lonely orphan. His eyes, normally sky blue, were dark as the sea during a storm as the despondent Uzumaki returned his gaze down to the fresh spring grass beneath his feet. Situations like this were when Naruto would struggle the most, being reminded just how alone he truly was. On occasion, Naruto had tried to ask the Hokage about his family, but the old man had adamantly refused. The dead didn't matter, according to Hokage Ji-chan, because dwelling on them wouldn't help the living, but if that was true, why did they have to learn about all those dead shinobi and previous Hokage in school? Why was it important to know about old wars, but it wasn't important to know who his parents were? Had they been bad people? Is that why those adults constantly referred to him as that kid, or that monster, among other things? Naruto knew better than to act up during these moments, so he just kept to himself. Things would be more comfortable after the adults left. They didn't like it when he tried to hang out with the other kids, and Naruto would usually suffer more for it. It always seemed the adults were bolder in showing their distaste for him when they were in groups anyway. Soon Naruto was relieved to see the adults dispersing, meaning it was time to head to class. His first year had been rough, to put it kindly, so Naruto hoped that things would start turning around. Maybe Iruka-sensei would finally give him praise for all the hard work he had put in during break. Or at the very least he could beat Sasuke at something. If Naruto could beat him, the rest of the class would finally see how cool he could be. Naruto had even gotten the hang of the Henge no Jutsu and was currently developing a new jutsu based on it. He had found it interesting that men tended to get distracted by the image of a pretty lady. The innocent boy discovered this when he saw a group of them fawning over a weird magazine when going down to the bookstore to buy some scrolls. Maybe if he got the new technique down, Iruka-sensei would ignore his lackluster Bunshin no Jutsu. Naruto had tried practicing the Bunshin a lot. He didn't attempt to make multiples anymore, so now at least he could make one the correct size, even if it still appeared half dead upon creation. Naruto was brought out of his thoughts as he found his favorite classmate. Even though he wasn't friends with Hinata, the girl's presence made the classroom bearable. She had been pleasant company throughout the end of winter, and her presence had always been so warm and comforting. The young boy smiled as he ran up to greet her, but upon his approach, Naruto slowed and his smile morphed into a frown, blue eyes filling with concern. The normally gentle, soothing warmth that enveloped the girl was absent, replaced with one of cold heaviness. Not the same kind of heaviness he felt when he made eye contact with the villagers. This one gave Naruto the same tightness he had in his chest just earlier that day when he had been sitting on his swing, or when he felt like crying. What could have happened to make the sweet girl feel this way? Good morning, Hinata-chan. Databeo. Naruto greeted, plastering on his best smile. He might as well greet her. Maybe then she'd be willing to tell him what was wrong on her own. The shy girl jumped in surprise as Naruto brought her out of her thoughts, and the change was immediate as her large eyes locked onto him. Like the sunny skies after a rainy day. The heavy feeling that had been emanating from Hinata evaporated, replaced with that delicious, comfortable warmth Naruto relished as he sat down, turning to stare at her intently, leaning against the desk, resting his head in his palm, propped up by his elbow. Gee, good morning, and Naruto-kun, Hinata mumbled quietly as she shifted nervously, hiding her face in her hooded vest. Now that Naruto looked at her more closely, he realized their outfits today were very similar, except for the colors, much to his amusement. With the season warming up, Naruto had opted for a sleeveless hooded orange vest with a blue t-shirt underneath, featuring what he had learned from Hokage Jichan to be his clan's insignia, the infamous Uzumaki spiral. His bottoms were a simple pair of long green cargo shorts that cut off mid-calf just above his blue shinobi-styled. Zo still wore his signature green goggles. They were essential for when he played his pranks after all. Hinata's vest was a pale purple, just a couple shades darker than her pretty eyes. Her undershirt was a pale cream. Naruto couldn't see her bottoms from their position but thought the getup made Hinata seem a bit cuter than her winter outfit. "Did you have a good break, Hinata-chan? You seemed kind of sad just a minute ago," Naruto asked quietly, making his concern evident as he gazed at her intently. The image of how the girl looked when they ran into each other during winter playing in his mind, motivating him to take the initiative. "I don't want to see her cry." The young Hyuga's nervous movements stilled as she looked down, hiding her eyes behind her bangs. That strange sensation seeped out of her once more, masking the warmth again with that painfully cold feeling. Naruto frowned. If he didn't know what was making her so sad, how would he be able to help her out? It was bad enough trying to handle the academy while dealing with that suffocating sensation he felt off of the rest of class, and the adults. Hinata's presence had become a blessing that Naruto had become reliant on, like a spoiled child's favorite blanket. Her comforting aura was like hot ramen on a rainy day. The blonde was desperate to get it back. For now, he'd have to be patient and see if Hinata would talk to him. Getting her to talk was always so difficult, like trying to get a bird to land in your hand without scaring it away. "I'm a burden to my clan. I'm weak, useless, and get in the way, and father has been becoming very disappointed in my lack of talent. Since starting the academy, I'm just a waste of space." Hinata relented with a quiet and shaky breath after a long pause. Naruto could tell she was on the brink of tears with how shaky her words had been, and had to strain to hear her words that seemed quieter than even a whisper, like she was afraid to say such painful things aloud. Humming in thought, the perplexed boy scrunched up his face, closing his eyes while formulating his thoughts on the matter before deciding to speak. "I don't think you're a waste of space, Hinata-chan, and I definitely don't find you to be useless. Databeo, I mean, if it wasn't for you, I probably wouldn't bother showing up to class as often," Naruto finally said, looking away as a blush crept up his face. It was embarrassing to disclose such things, but to Naruto they were true, and anyone that thought Hinata-chan was useless was an idiot in his book. With his admission, Naruto built up his nerve and stole a glance to see the girl blushing far more vibrantly than he was himself. The warmth came back, now with an additional tingling sensation, like butterflies in his stomach. This felt nice. The Uzumaki patted himself on the back as class started. He had accomplished his mission, now back to business as usual. Most of the day was spent reviewing what they had learned the previous year, at least until near the end of class. Naruto stared down at the blank paper in front of him, twirling his pencil absent-mindedly, smirking when he heard another student make a witty comeback at Irika-sensei's explanation of the assignment. If the world was to end tomorrow, who would you want to spend your last day on Earth with? This is stupid. The world isn't going to end, Databeo. Normally Naruto would be running a blank, get frustrated, and probably cause a scene. Giving the girl next to him a sidelong glance, the orange-clad boy decided to take a different approach. Quickly Naruto wrote down his answer before resting on the desk preparing for a nap, and conveniently hiding his paper until Irika-sensei was ready to gather up the assignments. Sitting next to Hinata-chan always feels so nice. As spring progressed, Naruto's days at the academy continued along in a similar routine. Outside of classroom assignments, they practiced different jutsu such as their aim and proper handling with shuriken jutsu, daily kata, and form practice with taijutsu, where they sparred with each other at least once a week. Naruto was beyond irritated that he still ritualistically got his ass kicked by almost everyone. It was like his mind wanted to do one thing and his body wanted to do another, making him mess up in front of everyone, repeatedly. With ninjutsu, they were in the process of practicing the Bunshin no Jutsu, something that Naruto still couldn't get down to save his life. This, ironically, is what it was meant for. It was frustrating and made him somewhat angry when the other students made fun of him during evaluations for not being able to get it down. Naruto always tried to laugh it off, but it still stung nonetheless. At least it seemed he had some talent with the Henji no Jutsu. He had heard that after summer break they were supposed to start learning the basics of the Kawarimi no Jutsu. Summer break, just the thought of it put knots into his stomach. Naruto would be alone again. It wasn't like he didn't feel that way right now, but at least school distracted him most days. Naruto would still ditch class from time to time, or cut class early when he was frustrated or overwhelmed, but usually regretted it by the end of the day. Besides the comfortable silence and short conversations before class he received from Hinata, Naruto wasn't having much luck with his other classmates. They usually treated him with disdain or ignored him outright. It was starting to become unbearable. Naruto was desperate to make some friends. Lately, he had been trying to hang out with a group of boys led by one of his classmates, named Hibachi, which loitered around the playground after class, but they generally tried to chase him off or would run off themselves. Sure, Hibachi had been a major jerk to him in class today, getting their other classmates to gang up on him and pretty much calling him a plague. This in turn led Irika-sensei into instructing them to ignore him, as if they didn't already do that. Naruto was brought out of his thoughts as he coincidentally noticed a group of boys discussing something. Interacting with Hinata had caused the young blonde to learn that sometimes it paid to be quiet and listen. You never knew just what you could learn by being silent. What Naruto had learned, and others tended to underestimate about him, among other things, was that when he wanted to he could have a knack for stealth. If he didn't, he wouldn't get away with the pranks he played on the villagers. The Uzumaki hung back and eavesdropped on the boys' conversation curiously. Listening intently, Naruto heard mention of a test of courage they were arranging tonight at the cemetery. Normally he would have demanded to be included, but now a different idea came to mind. Smirking to himself, he started to formulate a plan involving the mask he had recently acquired from a less-than-kind shopkeeper. Not only could he get Hibachi back for what happened in class, but maybe they'd want to be his friends if he could show them up, proving that he wasn't some useless loser. Quickly Naruto headed home to set his scheme into motion. I'll need that fox mask, maybe a sheet, it'd be easier than trying to keep up a henge. I'll also need to get there early enough that I can catch them off guard, but not early enough to be caught by some adult. What else? The mischievous Uzumaki became completely absorbed into his thoughts as he started to put his plan in motion. Running around his apartment gathering supplies, Naruto put together his costume, practicing in front of the mirror until he was satisfied with his act. The young ninja cadet actually took his pranks very seriously. Mostly because failed pranks usually ended with him either in pain or being forced to do extra work under the supervision of trained shinobi. By late evening, the now disguised boy was waiting patiently in his hiding spot atop the memorial monument that overlooked the cemetery. Naruto glanced up at the sky. It was currently on the cusp of twilight, so the other kids would be here soon. The boys arrived about half an hour later and started the process of lighting their lanterns while going over the rules of their challenge. Soon Naruto's first victim made their ascent, losing their nerve before they even got a third of the way through the cemetery, much to his disappointment. The second boy made it 2/3 of the way, so Naruto rewarded him by throwing his voice. "Garura Garura," he called, earning a yell of surprise from the terrified boy. Naruto had to stifle his laughter to not give away his hiding spot. Looking down from where he hid, the troublemaker watched the boys bickering with one another until his targeted victim finally decided to make his way up the path. Naruto watched as Hibachi made it to just below the monument. "Garura Garura, a child! A delicious child!" Naruto shouted before jumping down mere centimeters from the petrified boy. After a long pause, Hibachi let out a high-pitched scream, throwing up his lantern and running away, continuing to scream hysterically about a monster fox that wanted to eat him. Naruto couldn't control himself any longer, laughing to the point of tears. The prankster was so distracted by his reverie that he didn't notice another presence until they were about a meter away. This new figure gave off a scary aura, making the hairs on the back of Naruto's neck stand on end. "Oh, I might have made one of the adults a bit too mad with my joke, this could be bad." Gathering himself up, Naruto looked up to get a better look at the person in front of him. In relief, he realized it was just Iruka-sensei. Quickly he removed his mask, plastering on his best foxy grin, hoping to defuse the situation. "Ha! Ha! Iruka-sensei, did you see their faces? He. Better run away or I'll eat you all up. Bunch of babies. That was the best prank ever. Serves them right." "Naruto!" Iruka snapped sharply, getting Naruto's attention. The said boy stopped laughing, realizing he was going to be in trouble, maybe a lot of trouble. "Do you realize what you're doing?" the adult asked in a cold tone. Now that Naruto was focusing more, he realized that the heaviness had not dissipated even though he had revealed himself. Looking up, he saw iciness in Iruka's gaze. It was that look again. The look that said he was a nuisance, unwanted, unneeded, a plague on the village, a monster better off dead, the reason the yondaime had died. Naruto couldn't stand it anymore. Were his only choices to be hated or ignored? Why him? Why? Why does everyone, even my own teacher, why do you all look at me like that? I'm not a nuisance. I'm not some kind of disease. Databeo. I'm Uzumaki Naruto. Chikushu. I'm sick of this. I'll never return to the academy again. What's the point? With tears burning in his eyes, Naruto pushed past Iruka and ran off towards home, ignoring Iruka as the man called after him. Once safely in his apartment, Naruto slammed the door behind him and sunk to the floor, sobbing in frustration. Naruto didn't cry often, but this feeling was too overwhelming. Why did everyone hate him? Why did they make rules to exclude him? Why was he so alone? Why did everyone go out of their way to ignore him? What had he done to deserve this? Then having it forced into his face every day at the academy. Screw that. The academy, that's the only place I see Hinata-chan. Oh well, she'll probably forget about me after a while. It isn't like we're friends or anything anyway, Naruto thought bitterly, making his way towards his bedroom, haphazardly tossed articles of clothing around and put on his pajamas before climbing into bed. Naruto didn't feel like eating, so he turned in early for the night, drained by the feeling of loss and defeat. I'll miss her though, she was nice to talk to. In the recesses of his mind, sad scarlet eyes gazed up into his memories. Kurama couldn't prevent all of Naruto's pain, because in some instances the sacrifices led to exponential gains. The weary Kitsune only vaguely remembered this trial from the original timeline but understood that his interference was not needed. Instead, Kurama turned away from the gates that barred him from his young container to instead gaze down at the Hoshi no Tama held hidden in his many tails. Inside the large golden glowing orb rested a very familiar man sealed into stasis. When Kurama had forced himself back into the past, he was able to hold on to what had remained of that Naruto's chakra, the mature Naruto's memories, and a copy of the key to his seal that Kurama only accessed in what the QB considered true emergencies. Kurama tried his best to keep the previous incarnation's memory sealed, only allowing glimmers to methodically leak out when he felt it benefited the struggling youth. If the fox had still been his old hateful self, he would have used the opportunity to escape, but the old fox had made a promise he intended to keep. He was after all very fond of his container, even if the boy wasn't aware of it just yet. Just bear with it, kid, I promise this time will be better. For the next few days, Naruto found himself in a listless routine. Without the academy occupying his time, the despondent youth was mostly miserable and bored out of his mind walking around the village aimlessly. That was until the evening when he tried to play with kids at the park and temporarily forget about his problems. Granted, parents always admonished their children for playing with him or would hiss curses about him. Sometimes Naruto could swear he sensed Iruka-sensei but was quick to leave the area when that was the case. That was until one morning when he was abruptly woken up by the sound of someone ringing his doorbell. Naruto struggled in his tangled sheet, falling out of bed with a groan. After disentangling himself, he groggily made his way to the door, peering through the peephole. Iruka-sensei? What is he doing here? Quickly Naruto scrambled to find some decently clean clothes around his bedroom, shedding his pajamas at the same time before making his escape off the balcony, running over a couple of rooftops until finally deciding he'd made it a safe enough distance to get fully dressed. Why had Iruka-sensei shown up at his apartment? What did he want? Shouldn't the man be happy that Naruto wasn't going to be bothering his class anymore? The still groggy boy couldn't wrap his head around the situation and decided to put it off until he got some breakfast. Leaping back down onto the road, Naruto started to leisurely make his way to Ichiraku's. Or at least that had been the plan until he was halfway there and cornered by three familiar faces. What do you guys want? Naruto asked, feeling a bit on guard. He didn't like the look in their eyes or being surrounded from all sides. Hey Naruto, we decided you can join our group, Hibachi announced, smiling, earning a confused look from the other two boys accompanying him. Huh? Are you serious? Naruto asked excitedly. His previous suspicion was replaced with joy and suspense, ignoring a small tug at his senses that started to stir. Yeah, but to be one of us, there's a condition. Hibachi continued, waving his finger to emphasize his point, earning a knowing grin from his friends. At that, Naruto frowned and struggled with an internal conflict. Something in his gut was telling him not to trust these guys, but at the same time, this was a chance for him to finally get some friends. Even if he had to pay a small price of ridicule or embarrassment, he figured it'd be worth it in the end. What is it? Yesterday my dad's patrol unit fought with an enemy ninja in the back hills. He said they left the corpse out there. Find the corpse and bring back its belongings. If you do, you can join us. Hibachi calmly explained, though Naruto was experiencing a very nauseating feeling radiating off the other boy, something he hadn't experienced before. It made him feel ill. Is that it? For real? No tricks? Naruto asked cautiously. He wanted to make sure there was nothing else. The challenge was a bit morbid, but if it got him some friends, then he could just take a long bath later. Sure, he was getting bad vibes, but could put them out of his mind. The reward was too good to pass up. Yeah. Hibachi reassured with another smile, nodding in assurance. All right then. I'll bring back something for sure. Databeo. You can bet on it, Naruto proclaimed as he ran off with his new destination in mind. He was going to finally have friends. People that would want to hang out with him. He wasn't going to be alone anymore. This was going to be awesome. At least that had been what Naruto initially thought. Naruto groaned as he desperately continued to look around for what seemed to be at least over an hour. This was taking way longer than he thought. The corpse, where is it? Databeo, I know this area well since I always play here. But maybe I should have asked the guys for a more exact location, he grumbled to himself as he ended up empty-handed yet again after looking through some more bushes. Naruto jerked up, twisted himself to look into the eaves of a nearby tree to see a very unhappy-looking Iruka. Sensei? He shouted in shock. What are you doing? Get back to the academy, now! Iruka ordered sternly as he leapt down and approached Naruto, pointing back towards the village to strengthen his command. Naruto frowned as he bunched up his fists, stomping the ground in defiance. Sure, he'd been miserable and lonely all week, but the desperate child couldn't pass this chance by. It wasn't like people were lining up to be friends with him. I don't want to. I'm not going to the academy anymore. Databeo. He reaffirmed stubbornly, giving the adult a hard glare. Iruka gave him a reproachfully hard stare of his own before calmly warning in a serious tone, there are still dangerous people here. Yeah right, Iruka-sensei's just trying to trick me into returning to the academy. Adults always lie. I won't go back. Even if you beg me to. Naruto doubled down, waving his arms in a crossways motion to strengthen his point, all the while taking a few hesitant steps back away from the shinobi towering over him. "Do as I say, I am your instructor," Iruka commanded in a no-nonsense authoritative tone. At that remark the blood started to rush to Naruto's head as he went into a full-blown tantrum that only an undisciplined 7-year-old could manifest. "Shut up! Why do you only act like a teacher at times like this? Databeo!" he shouted in frustration, earning him a look of guilt from Iruka. The blonde's anger quickly transitioned to sadness remembering what had led to his current predicament, casting his large blue eye away from the current object of his inner turmoil. "Sensei, you don't understand my feelings. Even if I go back to the academy, things won't be any different. I'm always alone, I'm always left out." Naruto paused, feeling the anger returning, memories flooding his mind of being ostracized, the bullying, the neglect, the overwhelming loneliness. "Nobody gives a damn about me," the distraught orphan screamed, glaring back up at the man that just a few days ago could have cared less about him and his existence. Hadn't Iruka personally instructed the other kids to ignore him? Hadn't this man been treating him with indifference most of the year? Iruka in the current moment seemed to be struggling to articulate his thoughts, wanting to say something, but Naruto continued before he got a chance. "But this time, it'll be different. If I bring back some items, everyone will accept me as their friend. If I do that, I won't be alone anymore. I won't have to experience that feeling ever again." Naruto didn't know if he completely believed that to be true, given the sensations he had been getting off of Hibachi earlier, but he hopelessly wanted to believe he finally had a chance. What else did he have to lose? "That's why I'm going to find and bring back an item. Databeo," Naruto proclaimed earnestly, no longer glaring at Iruka, but silently daring him to interfere. Iruka seemed to hesitate once more, too shocked by Naruto's speech, pausing to gather his thoughts before he finally spoke. "Please try to understand. No matter what your reasons may be, as your teacher, I cannot allow you to go into such a dangerous area." Naruto frowned, looking down in defeat. Of course, Iruka would continue to brush his needs to the side. Why would he expect any different? "You really don't understand my feelings," he mumbled, feeling close to tears for a moment, before realizing this was a great opportunity since now Iruka's guard was down, and Naruto still hadn't had a chance to show off the new jutsu he'd been working on since they started learning the Henj no Jutsu. Smirking mischievously, the defiant child put his plan into motion, quickly bringing his hands together into the ram hand sign. "Killer attack! Oiroke no Jutsu!" With a pop and a bloom of smoke, the almost 8-year-old boy was replaced with a young attractive woman clad only in her underwear, her long blonde hair tied up into high pigtails. The boy-turned woman struck a provocative pose, winking suggestively. The reaction was instantaneous as Iruka-sensei keeled over, blood spilling from his nose from the sudden increase of blood pressure. "Oh! This attack is stronger than I thought, sweet." Taking this as his chance to escape, Naruto dropped the transformation, running off deeper into the woods, ignoring Iruka's desperate pleas for him to stop. "Honestly, adults are so easy to trick." "Databeo." Naruto snickered once he was confident that Iruka was no longer on his tail. The youth ran until he found himself in a clearing that had been recently disturbed. The new sight didn't seem to belong in the tranquil forest, and got the boy to skid to a halt as he took in his surroundings. Weapons and used paper tags were scattered about the wrecked foliage, showing the marks of a recent battle. "This has to be it, which means the corpse should be nearby," Naruto murmured to himself before carefully surveying the undergrowth. He didn't want to miss the body, or an unused explosive tag by mistake, the latter more for his own health. The young blue-eyed troublemaker circled the area thoroughly, before plopping down in defeat. Naruto hadn't found anything of unique interest, and he was getting weary. As if reading his mind, the exhausted boy's stomach growled pitifully. He hadn't eaten yet that day, and it was getting close to noon by now, or at least Naruto assumed so. It was hard to tell with all the trees around. "Well, I guess I can find a snack really fast before I continue looking," the weakened child reasoned to himself. Looking around the nearby trees, Naruto quickly found what he was looking for, a bird's nest. Chuckling to himself, the delighted boy carefully climbed up the tree with plans of grabbing some eggs, only to find something shiny glinting back at him. Confused, Naruto dug through the nesting material, pulling out a strange pronged kunai. "Oh? What's this? I've never seen one shaped like this before." Naruto carefully leaped back down, keeping a careful grasp on his prize, examining the strange blade in the sunlight. It wasn't like the Konohagakure-issued kunai. This one had two thin blades that branched up in the same direction, one of the blades stopping short of the other. The hilt was also weird, with a folded paper ribbon attached to it. "The enemy ninja must have used this kunai during the battle yesterday. I found an item I can bring back. Databeo." Naruto excitedly cheered aloud. He'd successfully found something, and he didn't have to pilfer a gross corpse to get it. Proud of himself for accomplishing his goal, Naruto turned to make his way back to Konoha. After not much time had passed, Naruto started to notice signs that he was close to the village. "Now I'll be able to make some friends," he exclaimed with a laugh, unable to contain his overflowing happiness. That is, before said feelings of joy quickly evaporated. 3 shinobi had suddenly appeared blocking his path, and they gave off bad vibes. Very bad vibes that made his hair stand on end and his muscles tremble. "Hey kid," the shinobi in the lead position started. What the? Who the hell are all of you? Naruto interrupted with a growl of bewilderment. He didn't recognize these ninja, and their headbands weren't Konoha's signature leaf insignia. Hand over the kunai, nice and easy. The de facto leader commanded in a calm, steady voice, laced with venom, ignoring Naruto's outburst. Naruto glanced down at the kunai in his hand. Why the heck would they want this? Stubbornly, he quickly hid it behind his back, desperate to keep his prize. And no way. I can't hand this over. Databeo. This was his only ticket to getting friends. He needed it more than these weird ninja, that was for sure. I see, it looks like we'll have to take it by force. The ringleader mused before all three shinobi drew ninjata from holsters on their backs. Huh? What? Wait a second. Naruto started before finding himself cross-eyed staring down the length of a razor-sharp blade. Sure, Shimada, what have I gotten myself into? He thought anxiously before letting out a frightened scream, turning to run for his life. It didn't seem the enemy ninja appreciated this, however, as Naruto had to continually dodge shuriken while trying to shake his pursuers. Never before had he been so happy to have his body's weird autopilot mode until now. The frightened boy didn't fight it, and just focused on the direction he was aiming for. At one point, Naruto tried to use his new jutsu on the trio, learning a very valuable lesson. First, Oiroku no jutsu didn't seem to work on women, it only made them mad, and second, the shinobi who were chasing after him were kunoichi. Today was just not his day. Naruto continued onward, trying to set off as many hunter traps as he could to slow the interlopers down. This was the only thing he could manage to keep himself alive at the moment. Naruto was in the woods, alone, and had a very realistic expectation of his ability to outrun trained, serious, and angry ninja that could care less about his well-being. The foolish boy was in serious trouble. Naruto, sensei? Naruto whispered to himself as he registered the voice, thanking all the kami above. He wasn't alone. Never had the endangered boy been happier to hear Iruka-sensei's voice. I'm over here. Databeo. He shouted, looking around the treetops as he ran. Unfortunately, his bad luck seemed not to have turned just yet as Naruto caught his foot in a tree root, launching himself head over heels down a steep hill, losing control as he tumbled end over end through the forest undergrowth. Naruto screamed, realizing he'd been unable to stop himself from somersaulting off the edge of a sheer drop-off. This is it. This is the end. He thought fearfully, watching the ground getting closer and closer to his face, and then his whole world went dark. I don't want to see her cry anymore. I'm tired of being alone. It's my fault. I'm sorry, Kurama. Hey! Are you alright? A familiar voice called out to him. Pull yourself together. Are you hurt? The voice asked more firmly as Naruto felt a strong pair of hands pick him up gingerly. Naruto grunted painfully in response as he forced his eyes open, looking around in a confused daze until Iruka's concerned face came into focus. Oh, thank goodness, you've regained consciousness. The young scar-faced man exclaimed with relief. Naruto felt like he wanted to vomit, and his head pounded painfully. What were those dreams? Who was Kurama? What was going on? As sensei, he mumbled, trying to gather his thoughts. But everything was a garbled mess that Naruto couldn't make heads or tails of. Come on. Let's head back to the academy. Iruka-sensei gently insisted as he helped Naruto carefully sit up. The concussed boy was still unsteady. There was something bad he needed to speak up about. What had he been doing? Naruto needed to warn sensei, but what about? Iruka's attention was suddenly brought up to where Naruto had fallen from. Up on the ridge stood three very angry-looking kunoichi. Oh, right. That. Kyuso. Those guys. Naruto tried to articulate weakly as he felt another wave of nausea wrap through his body. Iruka frowned warily at the kunoichi. What are you outsiders doing sneaking around Konoha? He barked threateningly, only to earn an unimpressed scoff in return. Who are you? Leave the brat with us, and don't put up a fight. The unofficial leader of the trio demanded, earning a hard glare from Iruka in return. Oh, I'm in charge of this child, I can't do that. The Konoha Chunin stated firmly. Normally Naruto would have felt impressed, but currently, he was trying to get his world to stop spinning. So you're a teacher? Another one of the women mused. It must be tough having such a bad student. Because of that you're going to die. The last snickered. It's the bad ones you get attached to. Besides, you won't be able to defeat me that easily. Iruka retorted in confidence. Wow, I didn't realize Iruka-sensei could be so cool, Naruto thought wearily as his world faded into darkness once more. Naruto awoke sometime later with a concerned Iruka peering down at him. He didn't feel as delirious as the first time he'd awoken, but his head still hurt like no other. From the way the light illuminated his surroundings, it looked like it was early evening at the moment. Hey, you're up. How are you feeling, Naruto? The weary teacher asked while handing the blonde a canteen and onigiri, helping him to sit up from where he'd been resting on the grass. Naruto noticed that Iruka was pretty banged up. Why had the teacher bothered to risk so much for a dropout like him? Didn't he hate Naruto like everyone else? Like the whole class used me for target practice before dropping a boulder on my head. Databeo, Naruto grumbled weakly, absently sipping his water and taking note of his surroundings. They were back in the village, more specifically the courtyard in front of the academy. Iruka chuckled in response to Naruto's creative assessment as he carefully studied the boy, Do you think you'll be fine out here by yourself while I take care of some business with Sandame-sama? I need to urgently report to him what went on, if not you're welcome to come with. Naruto thought about it for a moment, nibbling his rice ball as he weighed his choices. Normally it'd be fun to go hang out with Ji-chan since he didn't get to see him often, but in all honesty, the exhausted boy just wanted to get some more rest. I think I'll be fine out here, Iruka-sensei. I promise not to run away again. I've done enough running today. Naruto yawned, shuffling until he could comfortably slump against the nearby tree, mindlessly working on his light snack, watching Iruka head towards the Hokage's office. After about an hour or so, Naruto was feeling much better and decided to check his pockets for the pronged kunai he had acquired, only to find it was missing. All that work down the toilet. Just as Naruto started to feel at a loss, he noticed Iruka making his way back, so Naruto stood up to meet him, his childlike rationality taking over once more. Sensei, how could you lose the precious item I found? Databao. The frustrated boy whined accusingly, unaware of the adult's growing loss of patience. You idiot! Iruka finally shouted at him, causing Naruto to shrink back, yelping in surprise. Was this really Iruka-sensei? The same Iruka-sensei who didn't bat an eye when he greased the classroom entryway? The same Iruka-sensei that never made a peep when he was disrupting the class? Why was Iruka-sensei so mad now? You almost lost your life today. The adult growled sternly, not even remotely bothered by Naruto's fear-filled outburst. Oh, so that's why he's mad, Naruto thought as comprehension dawned on him. Guiltily the scolded boy looked away in shame. Iruka had been worried about his well-being. It had never occurred to Naruto that someone would be afraid for him. That's true, but Naruto trailed off considering his actions. Had it been worth almost dying just for a chance to be friends with Hibachi of all people? He was starting to feel awkward as the man's demeanor made him reflect on his choices that day. Was this what it must feel like to have a parent? You're awfully quiet today, Iruka remarked curiously, having finally calmed down from his tirade. That's because this is the first time you've yelled at me. I'm surprised, Tabeo, Naruto admitted, nervously fidgeting, giving the man a sidelong glance. In reality, no one ever really yelled at Naruto, at least not out of concern for him. To curse his existence was one thing, but this felt different. It made Naruto feel sheepish and ashamed of his behavior. Iruka chuckled at the admittance. I see. That's right. I've decided to be more upfront with you as your teacher. Starting tomorrow, I'm going to be more strict with you, he promised confidently as he smiled down at humbled youth, thus earning another shocked look of disbelief from the expressive blonde, his mouth agape disbelievingly. Yeah? That makes me want to come back to the academy even less. Databao. Naruto whined dejectedly. This new Iruka-sensei was throwing him for a loop. He didn't know if he'd be able to handle a stricter teacher, or worse, be able to meet his expectations. Naruto, do you have the will of fire in you? Asked Iruka, pulling Naruto from his childish thoughts. Will of fire? What's that? Naruto questioned curiously, tilting his head to the side in confusion. It's the strong will to protect the village. If you have it, you can become as strong as the Hokage. The Hokage? The Hokage is really that strong? Naruto asked excitedly, his interest piqued. Yeah, he's not just strong either. Everyone respects the Hokage. He is our leader. The Yondaime, for instance, is the hero who protected the village from the Baikitsun. A hero? Naruto echoed in awe, seeming lost in thought for a moment before grinning. Okay, I think I've made up my mind. I'm going to become a Hokage who is stronger than the Yondaime. I'm going to make everyone acknowledge my strength. Tabeo. Iruka smiled at the boy's proclamation. Pulling out a kunai, the instructor stepped forward, scoring a line into the trunk of the tree Naruto was standing in front of. You might be able to become Hokage by the time you're this tall. Yeah. I'm gonna work really hard to become Hokage. Databao. Naruto cheered, happily dancing around in front of the amused instructor. But you know, Naruto, you can't become Hokage with just power alone. You'll need the support of people willing to follow you as well. At this admission, Naruto hung his head depressed. So I can't get acknowledged unless people already acknowledge me? What kind of crap is that? Naruto, I don't think you're as alone as you think. Here, come with me back to the classroom. I have something I want to show you. Iruka explained, turning to head into the academy. The blonde became confused but hopeful upon hearing Iruka's statement, and dutifully trailed closely behind. Naruto, you need to know I would never have found out, or had any idea you were in danger if it hadn't been for Shikamaru, Iruka explained as they walked down the hall heading to the classroom. Naruto was shocked to hear this. Shikamaru never really spoke or hung out with him, but sometimes he caught the dark-haired boy staring at him intently, like trying to solve a puzzle. Yes, since I hadn't been able to get in contact with you the past couple of days, I decided to ask your peers if they'd seen you. He was very brave to speak up about what Hibachi had done, Iruka continued, sliding the classroom door open, taking a glance down at Naruto, who'd started to sniffle, trying to hold back tears. No one had ever stood up for him before. From now on, Shikamaru was definitely on his do not prank list. Oh, and he's not the only one looking out for you, Naruto. Here, take a seat while I find what I want to show you, the Chunin directed as he began digging through a filing cabinet behind his desk. Quietly, Naruto sat in a chair usually reserved for the assistant teacher Mizuki, waiting patiently with his mind too much of a blur to do much else. Not that he had to wait long. Ah, here we are. Now, Naruto, do you remember the assignment I had you do at the beginning of the year? The one about who'd you want to spend your last day on Earth with? Iruka asked, turning to Naruto with two papers held in his hand. After a pause, Naruto nodded, recalling the seemingly unimportant lesson. Do you remember who you chose? Naruto thought about it for a second before blushing and looking at his feet, which earned a laugh from his teacher. Where is Iruka-sensei going with this? Well, I have something very interesting to show you. You see, I think you'll be surprised to learn that there are people that care about you and would miss you if you weren't around. Take a look for yourself. Iruka explained with a smile, revealing the answers on the two papers to Naruto. The first he instantly recognized as his own, the other. Really? She'd want to? Bibo, why me? Keikuso, Naruto stammered, his voice cracking as he fought against tears now falling freely down his striped cheeks. The emotionally moved child vigorously rubbed the drops away as he handed the papers back to Iruka. Naruto didn't want to cry and didn't understand why he couldn't stop. The feeling of relief was so overwhelming. He felt stupid, happy, embarrassed, angry, relieved. Naruto felt too many things, and could only express the whirlwind of sensations by breaking down. His sensei took the papers back, placing them absently on his desk to deal with later. For now, it seemed that these revelations were too much for Naruto, and Iruka had a child to console. Hesitantly, the young instructor gently rested his hand on the boy's head, rubbing his soft, disheveled blonde locks. Naruto flinched from the foreign contact before raising his large, watery eyes to face the reassuring smile of Iruka. That's something you'll just have to ask Hinata-chan, Naruto. And you know, it's okay to cry when you're happy. It had been a few weeks since the incident with the foreign ninja and the enlightening conversation Naruto had with Iruka. Since that day, their relationship had improved immensely. Naruto returned to school. Even on days he didn't feel like going, Iruka made sure that he showed up. If Naruto was absent or late, Iruka would be outside his apartment door or bound to find him around town. Naruto didn't know whether to be happy that he'd finally caught someone's attention or frustrated that he couldn't get away with anything anymore without fear of invoking his sensei's wrath. Not that this stopped him from pulling pranks on the village populace. Naruto was just getting smarter, faster, and sneakier. It had also become a game to stun the poor man with his Oiroke no Jutsu. Hibachi and his friends had been severely punished for the incident that occurred the previous month, and Iruka had a long talk with Naruto explaining the important differences between quantity and quality. Taking the lesson to heart, the young boy focused on more important knowledge he'd learned that evening. Naruto Shikamaru at the very least tolerated his existence and risked ridicule with his peers to ensure Naruto's well-being. They may not be friends per se, but they could at least talk and hang out passively at times. With Shikamaru came a Kimichi Chojiai. Naruto learned very quickly not to tease the rotund boy about his weight. He could become quite violent when properly motivated. Shikamaru knew the best places to take naps around the village, introduced Naruto to a relaxing hobby known as cloud watching, and seemed to be sensitive about the issue around Naruto being an orphan. Chojiai, on the other hand, introduced Naruto to other snack foods besides ramen. Naruto still preferred ramen. It was the food of the gods after all, but the Uzumaki appreciated the gesture nonetheless. It was nice that he finally had some people to hang out with at the park. It seemed the boy's parents tolerated Naruto hanging around their children at the very least. He still went home alone every night, but at least he didn't feel as isolated. Then came Hyuga Hinata. Naruto didn't know how to approach the girl about the revelations revealed to him. She didn't just tolerate his existence. It seemed she actually held some importance for it. Naruto had decided that once he returned to school he'd make a better effort to get to know her, so he did. Surprisingly, Naruto found that they had some similar interests. They both enjoyed sweets. For instance, Hinata was partial to zensai while he preferred ashiruko. Her favorite hobby was flower pressing. Naruto revealed to her his secret hobby of cultivating houseplants, even the fact that he took to naming them, his favorite being Uki-san. Over a short amount of time, it seemed both children looked forward to their quiet discussions before the start of class. Well, it was mostly Naruto talking and Hinata listening. After the issue at the start of the year, Naruto didn't feel Hinata would appreciate talking about her home life, and since Naruto himself didn't have a family, they just avoided that topic altogether. On the days Hinata seemed depressed, Naruto would go out of his way to make her smile. Even though she never said anything, he could tell by her presence that she enjoyed his pranks, although sometimes his pranks would backfire in a spectacular fashion, leading to Naruto being pummeled, particularly by an irate Haruno Sakura, or other members of Sasuke's fan club. It wasn't like Naruto aimed for the girls on purpose. His primary targets were usually Iruka-sensei and Uchiha Sasuke. Granted, Sasuke always outsmarted him, so his targeted pranks usually failed, but it was still worth the challenge most of the time. Today was the day Naruto had been dreading for the past few weeks. It was the start of summer break, and as such, that meant Naruto was going to be alone for the rest of the month, and would have to train more extensively to keep up with his home studies. The troubled orphan sat on his swing outside the academy entrance, contemplating his envy towards his peers. Times like this made it so difficult for him, even with his newly acquired friends. Friends, I have friends? Naruto paused, contemplating that thought with a small smile. Sure, he was never invited to their respective homes, and they weren't allowed to hang out at his, but he had people to hang out with now, at least on occasion. That settled it. In between his training sessions, Naruto would get some gifts for his newly acquired companions over the break. Hinata-chan seems to like flowers. Maybe I can find some special ones in the forest. Choji seems to just like food in general. I could probably give him some of my special occasion ramen. That just leaves Shikamaru. Ugh, he's still so hard to figure out. Databeo. A sudden commotion brought Naruto out of his thoughts. He could have sworn he heard Hinata just then, which confused him since he never saw her out of class. Leaning back on his swing, the blonde turned towards the source of the noise, spotting a group of older boys crowding around something. Then he heard it again. It was definitely Hinata's voice. There was no mistake. Clenching his jaw, Naruto scrambled off of the swing, running over to see Hinata being forced to kneel on her hands and knees while one of the boys held her head down in a prostrating position. She was repeatedly apologizing for something and crying. They were making her cry. Knock it off! Naruto barked, glaring fiercely up at the older boys who whipped around to look at him. And what the hell do you want? Growled one of the boys, as if daring Naruto to intervene. The would-be hero merely glared in reply. Hey, wait, he's that kid! That kid who's always getting into trouble. That kid everyone hates. The ringleader pointed out, taking his attention from Hinata, giving the poor girl some reprieve to gather herself. Oh, that kid, huh? All the boys started to snicker. Naruto tightened his fists, digging his nails into his palms while shaking with quiet anger. He hated it when people talked that way about him, like he wasn't there, like he wasn't a person. Gazing past them, he saw Hinata straightening herself up, wiping away her tears. Good, their focus was completely on him. Gathering his resolve, Naruto decided to play the situation to his favor, even if it was 3 against 1. Hey! I'm not that kid! My name is Uzumaki Naruto, future Hokage of Konohagakure. Remember that. Databeo, Hokage? All 3 boys repeated in disbelief before they started to laugh even louder, jeering their lack of faith in his claims between breaths. Some idiot kid like you started the more aggressive of boys, as he threw a sucker punch. Naruto grunted as the fist impacted his cheek, refusing to show weakness to these boys, and especially not in front of Hinata. It hurt, but he was still standing. Could never be Hokage. The boy continued with a second, more forceful punch, sending Naruto spinning to the ground. It was painful, but he needed to be strong. Naruto couldn't become Hokage if he couldn't protect his precious friends. Spitting out the blood that filled his mouth, the bruised but determined boy stubbornly stood back up. Wiping the remnants of vermilion fluid from his chin, Naruto glared defiantly up at the 3 bullies. He smirked, letting out a confident chuckle, giving off the air that the punch was nothing to him, riling the other boy even more. Naruto spared a glance towards Hinata as she shakily stood up, watching the scene in front of her. Why is she just standing there? This is her chance to escape. You want to fight? The combative older boy snarled threateningly, earning a cocky grin from Naruto. You better not, or you'll regret it. Naruto warned boldly, putting his hands into the seal meant for the Bunshin no Jutsu. He knew it was his weakest jutsu, but he also knew the most important thing in a battle was to catch your enemy by surprise. Bunshin no Jutsu, and no way? The older boys seemed to be scared until the smoke cleared and there stood Naruto's half-baked abomination. At least this one was standing. Everyone seemed dumbstruck, even Hinata. After a pause, the older boys were in hysterics, laughing uncontrollably at the failed jutsu. This was the opportunity that Naruto had been looking for. Letting out a battle cry, he tackled the primary aggressor to the ground, taking the chance to return a few punches of his own. I caught you off guard, didn't I? You just watch, I will become Hokage. Databeo. I'll show all of you. I'll prove you all wrong, he declared with each punch. Get him! The other 2 boys hollered, quickly yanking Naruto off of their comrade and pinning him down so they could deliver a punishing beatdown. Naruto grunted and groaned under the punishing punches and kicks, but tried his best to remain strong. He could hear Hinata whimpering, but at least their primary focus was still on him. Why wouldn't she run away? He was providing a distraction after all. Hinata-sama! A mature voice shouted. At the sound of the approaching adult, the older boys stopped their assault, hurrying to get up and make a speedy escape. Good, she's safe now, Naruto thought as the footsteps stopped near him. Letting out a relieved sigh, he succumbed to his injuries and drifted out of consciousness. It's my fault. I made her suffer for years. If only I could go back and do things differently. It was dark by the time Naruto awoke. He found most of his superficial wounds had already healed, which wasn't anything new to him. His body was still stiff, sore, and would probably remain that way for the next couple of days. The bruised child was happy that he could take the attention off of Hinata, but would have been happier if he didn't have to get thrashed in the process. Naruto needed to get stronger. A Hokage protected everyone, he couldn't even protect himself. With that thought in mind, the defeated but still optimistic Uzumaki struggled to his feet, slowly making his way home. Over summer break, Naruto trained himself into the ground, testing his skills with increasingly more elaborate pranks that stirred the ire of the shinobi populace within the village. He was getting fast enough to outrun most of the Jonin, and even some of the ANBU. Naruto knew, of course, that they weren't being as serious as they could be if he'd been a real threat, but it still made him feel good that he was starting to see results from all his hard work. Naruto wished he could afford actual practice kunai, but was afraid of losing them, so rocks suited him just fine when practicing the aim needed for shuriken jutsu. He couldn't practice his taijutsu either, lacking a sparring partner. Instead, Naruto took his aggression out on a practice dummy he created in Sasuke's likeness. He also diligently practiced the kata they'd been learning in school. Sometimes Naruto would even try to work on the weird moves his body tried to implement, slowing them down and breaking them into kata to practice. Some of the moves didn't seem to fit with his current stature and could only be executed clumsily, but Naruto found them interesting. Naruto was after all one of the smallest in his class, so any moves that would give him an advantage in spars couldn't be wasted. Since they started learning chakra theory in class, Naruto had come to understand that chakra was a balance of both physical and spiritual energy. Since he trained and exercised daily, he wasn't worried about his physical energy. To raise his spiritual energy, Naruto attempted to meditate and read scrolls, but still wasn't disciplined sufficiently enough to sit the adequate duration to gain any noticeable effects. Naruto sometimes wondered if that was the reason he couldn't complete a successful bunshin, and was abhorrent in genjutsu. Naruto contemplated asking for help from Iruka-sensei once school started back up, but quickly decided against it. He needed to figure out some things by himself, and couldn't be held by the hand if he wanted to be acknowledged for his own power one day. One of the stealth practice challenges Naruto attempted one day, for training, had been to sneak into the adult bookstore for more references to perfect his Oiroku no Jutsu. He noticed one of the more popular magazines was full of naked women instead of women in their underwear, so Naruto started to implement that idea to make the jutsu more effective. The naive youth was even planning on testing out the effectiveness of the personalized henge by trying to sneak into the public baths at some point, but wasn't confident or brave enough yet to try it. After all, he'd learned that women tend to get mad when he used that technique for some reason, and they showed it by hitting him repeatedly. Today, though, Naruto was taking a break from everything, relaxing on top of the Yondame's likeness carved into the Hokage monument, leisurely eating a popsicle, and watching the clouds. Shikamaru was right. At first, Naruto thought the idea of cloud watching was boring, but it did help to focus his thoughts, not to mention it was fun to notice recognizable shapes in the puffy white formations. Currently, however, his mind was wandering towards the strange changes that had occurred with him since midwinter. Some subjects in the class had become easier to understand, and when Naruto wasn't trying to clumsily show off or getting flustered, he noticed that he'd greatly improved in shuriken jutsu and taijutsu. Granted, Naruto would probably be immensely better if he wasn't so short or uncoordinated. He'd started to drink more milk in hopes that it would help improve his short stature, but so far he wasn't having any luck. Not counting the positive improvements with his more practical skills, Naruto noticed some other concerning changes. The blonde had figured out that the presence he felt from others was most likely an inherent ability of some sort. Naruto would have to clarify this with Iruka-sensei, though, since it would be important to disclose for team placement once he graduated. The last thing Naruto noticed and planned on keeping to himself was the voice he'd randomly hear in his head on rare occasions. It wasn't like the voice told him to do bad things, but Naruto wasn't dense enough to think it'd go over well with Iruka-sensei or Hokage Ji-chan if he told them he'd started to hear voices. Strangely, Naruto found the oddly familiar voice and the bizarre dreams he'd have from time to be comforting. Like he wasn't as alone anymore, but a small part of him wondered if it was healthy to think this way. Naruto decided to keep all these changes to himself for now until he could understand them better. It wasn't like they were hurting anything, and so far the advantages outweigh the cons. Noticing that he was absently chewing on his popsicle stick, the treat completely consumed, the young Uzumaki stood up, stretching in a fluid motion before leaping off the mountain face with practiced ease. Naruto needed to head home and prepare for the new semester set to start in a few days. If it was anything like the last one, he knew Iruka-sensei would be testing them on how well they had improved, kept up with their studies, or fell behind during their break. Now that the academy instructor had stopped ignoring Naruto, he'd become quite the hard ass, and the mischievous boy wanted to avoid earning his ire so soon into the start of the new semester. After all, emotions were fickle things, and he didn't want Iruka-sensei to hate him like before. On the first morning of the ninja cadets' return from summer break, Naruto showed up to class early. Making himself comfortable near one of the windows while waiting for his favorite classmate to show up, the sun-kissed blonde didn't have to wait long before the indigo-haired girl appeared, but he was surprised by her reaction when they locked eyes. Did she seem afraid? Straightening up with nervous apprehension, Naruto watched Hinata timidly approach him, being completely taken aback when she bowed to him abruptly. "And Naruto-kun, I wanted to apologize," she blurted, earning a bewildered response from the confused boy. "NW, what do you mean, Hinata-chan? Please, for the love of Kami-sama. Stop bowing. I'm sorry. The other day I ended up abandoning you, and you'd been hurt so badly even after you helped me that other time too. I'm just so weak and useless, Hinata stammered, her voice shaking as she started to shudder and sniffle. Naruto was completely dumbfounded. Had she really been stressing out about that event this whole time? All of summer break? The embarrassed boy glanced around. The classroom was still mostly empty, but the few students who'd arrived were watching them curiously, and it felt uncomfortable. Rubbing the back of his neck, Naruto tried to think of a way to handle the situation. He still wasn't used to a lot of social interactions and didn't quite know how to deal with scenarios like this. The boy thought about how Iruka-sensei comforted him when he became overwhelmed after the hibachi incident, deciding to emulate what he remembered. Hesitantly, Naruto gently patted Hinata's shoulder. The girl flinched initially before slowly looking up to see Naruto flashing his signature toothy smile. You have nothing to be sorry for, Hinata-chan. I'm just happy you weren't hurt. I'm totally fine, Tebeo. So please don't cry anymore, okay? He requested earnestly, wiping a stray tear from her cheek, earning a vibrant blush from the girl in reaction. But Hinata trailed off as Naruto silenced her with an intense gaze partnered with a frown. Look, Hinata-chan. If you're really worried about it, just continue to work hard at getting stronger. That way you can protect me next time. Databeo. After all, we're not even full-fledged shinobi yet. We have plenty of time to improve. Naruto proclaimed, a quick smile returning to his face before he leaned over to shuffle through his bag. Oh, that reminds me. You said you like to press flowers in your spare time, right? Well, I found these when I was out training and thought you might enjoy them. I'm not sure if I did it right, but I hope that's okay, the light-hearted boy rambled, pulling out one of his books, opening it to reveal delicately pressed pale white wild irises, deep purple lining the edges of each petal. As Naruto showed Hinata the gift he'd procured her, the warmth she was radiating suddenly increased to a new sensation he couldn't put into words. This feeling took Naruto completely by surprise. It was better than anything he'd experienced before. It was better than even ramen from Ichiraku's. If you could believe that. He was dumbstruck, and it took a moment to gather himself. Naruto hadn't even been aware that he stopped breathing as he slowly looked up to see Hinata as red as a tomato. Hinata-chan, are you okay? You're awfully red, do you need some water? I know it's been kind of hot lately. Naruto asked with concern as he carefully slid the gift over to Hinata's portion of the desk. And no, thank you. I'll be fine, the shy girl mumbled, burying her face in her vest. Naruto just shrugged in response, returning to his earlier relaxed position, resting his head on folded arms, getting comfortable while waiting for the remainder of the class to arrive. Savoring this new level of comfort, Naruto couldn't help drifting back to sleep. He knew Iruka would make sure he was awake by the time class started, so he wasn't worried. After what seemed like no time at all, Naruto was stirred awake by a suffocating feeling that chilled him to the bone. It was being partially masked by the warmth pouring off of Hinata, but he could still feel it. It wasn't the normal feeling he felt coming from people who hated him, it was on a whole other level. Where was it coming from, or rather who? Naruto couldn't tell from his position as he opened his eyes wide, looking around frantically. It seemed everyone else had arrived, and Iruka was walking in to start class. How come no one else was aware of this pressure? How could they stand it? And Naruto-kun, are you alright? You look a little pale, Hinata whispered worriedly. Naruto blinked up at her. I am alright, Hinata-chan, it's nothing to worry about. I promise, Databeo. He lied quickly, trying to focus on Iruka's instructions but finding the pounding of his heart in his ears distracting. If no one else was aware, at the very least Naruto didn't want to worry Hinata. She already had a hard enough time that morning. Naruto had been correct that they were going to have evaluations over everything they'd learned before the summer break. Iruka had just directed the students to file out to the practice field. As the children made their way out of the classroom, Iruka held Naruto back, looking at him with concern. Naruto, are you okay? You're quieter than normal, and don't look too good. I'm fine, sensei. I think I might just be a little tired is all. Naruto quickly answered, feeling uncomfortable as he started to break out in a sweat. The sensation had become more saturated when he gathered with the other students. Who is it? Who's causing this feeling? Maybe I should tell Iruka-sensei. No. I won't worry him over nothing. Well, alright then, but don't try to hide it from me if you start to feel worse, Iruka advised firmly before the two quickly rejoined the rest of the class. Naruto did feel nauseous but was pretty sure he wasn't sick. After all, he felt fine most of the morning. During their evaluations, Naruto's mind was elsewhere. He didn't even feel like drawing attention to himself or throwing a tantrum like he normally would have, instead, tuning out the snickers and jeers when he predictably failed the Bunshin no Jutsu. It wasn't until they got around to the spars that he started to pinpoint who was giving off this sickening aura. It was Sasuke. What had happened to Mr. Popular over the summer? Why did he feel so dangerous now? Naruto groaned when he heard Iruka called both of their names. He didn't want to deal with Sasuke today. In fact, he didn't want to be anywhere near him. The closer the two got to one another, the more uncomfortable Naruto felt. It was as if his body was rejecting the whole experience. The confused blonde felt sick, his muscles were twitching uncontrollably in his limbs. All his instincts were telling him to run away. His mind was swimming with emotions he'd never experienced before. Naruto wanted to cry, to scream, to curl up in a ball and disappear. It was dark, it was cold, and it was scary. Walking up into the sparring circle, Naruto half-heartedly made the seal of confrontation, trying to muster up his usual vigor. He didn't want to disappoint Irika. He's worked so hard during the summer to improve his skills. I need to focus, Kyuso. I can figure out problems with team later. Psyching himself up, Naruto took his stance, waiting for the signal to start. Just as Irika gave the signal, Naruto ran forward, only to end up on his back before he could register what happened. With a fist mere centimeters from his face, and a very scary look in Sasuke's eyes not far behind. He's not even looking at me, he's looking through me. Just what could make him feel so much hate? No, this is stronger than hate, Naruto thought before finally reaching his limit. Sasuke was too close, and the dark force emanating from him was too much for Naruto to handle. Quickly Naruto pushed Sasuke off of him, much to everyone's surprise since he was so much smaller. Then in a fluid motion, Naruto rolled onto his hands and knees, proceeding to vomit uncontrollably, earning a chorused cry of disgust from his fellow students. Naruto didn't care. He could still see those eyes. They looked dead yet alive. They promised nothing but misery and pain. Naruto needed to get away, but the world was spinning. He couldn't run, let alone stand. Irika rushed forward, kneeling at Naruto's side, but the delirious child barely took notice of him. Being close to 8, Naruto had not been mentally or emotionally prepared for the feelings emanating off the Uchiha. Naruto had felt similar things before, but nothing so intense, or up close. He couldn't breathe, no matter how much he panted, no air filled his lungs. He couldn't think, all he felt was panic. His body was shivering, but it wasn't cold outside. Before Naruto could make heads or tails of the situation, his eyes rolled up into his head, and the world went dark. I spared your life on a whim, nothing more. But this time, my whim is telling me to finish what I started. Naruto was soon roused by the sensation of cold water being poured onto his face. Spluttering, the shaken boy quickly sat up to see most of his class watching him nervously from the side, and a disapproving, supremely worried Irika kneeling over him with an upturned canteen. Shurmata, Naruto. I told you to tell me if you got worse. For now, I want you to go rest in the shade until the rest of the class is done with the drills. I mean it. You probably gave yourself heat stroke without realizing it. But sensei, now Naruto. With no room for argument, Naruto obediently sulked his way over to where he'd been instructed to rest, sitting grumpily in his drenched clothes. Wiping wetness from his face, Naruto noticed the remnants of a nosebleed. Had things been more serious than he assumed? Keeping with Irika's strict orders, the exhausted youth quietly watched the rest of the spars, followed by basic kata exercises and leaf concentration exercises. He noticed Hinata stealing anxious glances at him from time to time, and at one moment even saw Shikamaru staring at him with curiosity and concern. Naruto was completely embarrassed. He'd never shown such a moment of weakness in front of his whole class before. The only one that had come close to seeing him in such a vulnerable state would probably have to be Hinata, but never something like this. It was humiliating, and the worst part was everyone thought he did it to himself. In reality, it wasn't his doing. Naruto wasn't suffering from heat stroke. In all honesty, he didn't understand what exactly happened himself. Naruto at least knew the cause, shifting his gaze to glare at a certain Uchiha. Sasuke had been glancing at him almost as much as Hinata, but he couldn't figure out what the raven-haired boy was thinking. Naruto did, however, make it a point to sit as far away from the ominous boy as the training field permitted. Today had been going so well too, and team had to ruin it. Just what's his problem anyway? Naruto thought irritably in a huff before noticing that Irika was in the process of dismissing the class. It seemed Hinata wanted to linger, but Irika convinced her to follow the rest of the students back to class while the shinobi walked over to inspect Naruto. The Chunin instructor frowned as he stared down at Naruto with disapproval and apprehension, earning a scowl from the still frustrated and embarrassed youth. Sighing, Irika massaged his cheek sheepishly before deciding to plop down next to Naruto and look up at the sky. So, you want to explain to me what happened today? Irika asked after a pause. I didn't have heat stroke, sensei. Honest. Databeo. Naruto quickly started, standing up to face Irika, animatedly waving his hands as he stomped his feet. I was feeling fine. Well, until Sasuke. Naruto trailed off, not sure how to articulate the next part of his defense. Sensei, did something happen to Sasuke over the summer? Irika seemed to stiffen at the question, turning his attention fully onto Naruto, a serious look crossing his face as he studied the child in front of him. Why do you ask, Naruto? Well, I don't know how to explain it. He just felt different today. That's why I was having problems earlier. It was like hate or anger, but way worse, and it didn't seem directed at me. I don't really know how to explain it to Bayo. All I know is it was scary, dark, and made me feel sick. Not the heat. I swear. Databeo. Naruto explained sincerely, noticing a swift change in Irika's demeanor throughout his explanation. Naruto, do you feel things like this often? Like stuff you can't quite explain, but generally from people other than yourself? Iruka slowly asked in a cautious tone as he studied the blonde. Naruto nodded enthusiastically. This earned a deep frown from the adult in turn. It's not always bad things though. Hinata-chan always feels warm, like ramen on a cold day. Databeo. Naruto quickly added, hoping to dissuade some of his sensei's worry. Iruka became quiet, his gaze unfocused, seemingly lost in thought. Naruto waited restlessly and with increasing anxiety. Without warning, the instructor quickly stood up, ruffling Naruto's hair, his frown morphing into a smile, much to the boy's confusion and relief. I want you to take it easy for the rest of the day, is that clear? As for Sasuke, it isn't my place to tell you what happened with him. Just understand he's going through a lot right now, and it would be best if you avoided him for the time being. Naruto frowned in disappointment. That wasn't the answer he was hoping for. At least Iruka-sensei believed him. As if reading Naruto's disgruntled thoughts, the Scarface twirled his index finger playfully, looking away with a smirk, having recaptured Naruto's attention. Tell you what, if you can behave. Say by doing some leaf concentration exercises since you're feeling better, while I go and speak with Hokage-sama, I'll treat you to ramen for dinner. How's that sound? Naruto broke out into a big smile, nodding energetically, taking no time to get started as Iruka hurriedly made his leave. After close to half an hour though, Naruto was having trouble retaining his focus. His thoughts kept drifting back to Sasuke. He'd seemed so angry, but also seemed to have been in a lot of pain. Sure, usually Naruto hated the jerk. He was stuck up, popular, and seemed to be good at just about everything. Naruto, however, wasn't heartless, and knowing that someone was suffering, especially someone he knew, didn't sit well with the blonde. What had happened to him? It must have been pretty bad if Iruka was unwilling to share the information freely. A fluttering caught Naruto's attention as his leaf fell from his forehead once again, which caused him to squint his eyes in irritation. Naruto beat his fist lightly against his brow, reminding himself that he needed to focus to do the chakra exercise properly. Picking his leaf back up, the blonde shook his head, trying to clear his mind. Iruka-sensei had after all instructed him to leave the Uchiha alone for the time being. He'd also promised Naruto ramen, so the ninja cadet needed to at least look serious about his training until his teacher returned. Another half hour passed and Naruto was getting anxious. What was taking Iruka-sensei so long? Growing tired of the leaf balancing exercise, the blue-eyed boy made his way across the practice field. Taking some leftover kunai out of one of the target dummies to practice his shuriken jutsu, he hurled them at the target. Now that the academy had restarted, Naruto could continue practicing with the real deal again. Well, practice with models that were a bit duller than the shinobi issue ones at least. He wouldn't be able to get to touch those just yet. Naruto had gotten in about an hour of target practice before Iruka returned with some scrolls tucked under his arm. The boy looked up curiously as the man rushed over to him. Sorry for making you wait, Naruto. My discussion with Saname-sama took a bit longer than I thought it would. I'm surprised you stuck around. At least it saves me the trouble of tracking you down again. Well, duh, you promised me free ramen. I'd be an idiot to skip out on that. Databeo. Naruto deadpanned, causing Iruka to sweat drop. Ahem. Well, I guess so. Let's be on our way then, shall we? Iruka coughed, trying to regain his composure. Hell yeah! Ramen! 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 Naruto sang enthusiastically as they exited the courtyard heading towards Ichiraku's. Upon arrival, Naruto plopped down on one of the fixed bar stools happily, quickly grabbing a pair of chopsticks as he excitedly called out his order. Waaken! A large serving of miso ramen with extra pork. Iruka-sensei's treating me today, Tabeo. The chef laughed heartily, nodding his head in reply as he started Naruto's order. Iruka followed suit though with a bit more resignation. The usual please, Tuchi-san, he grunted, carefully placing his scrolls off to the side, lazily leaning over and grabbing a pair of chopsticks as he waited for his meal. Naruto's order came quickly and he heartily dug in. Ichiraku's ramen really was the food of the gods. It didn't take him long to finish his first bowl, and after ordering his second, Naruto looked over at the scrolls, noting how Iruka had been carrying them when he returned from the Hokage's office. Nani, Iruka-sensei, what's with the scrolls? Oh, these? This is what I went to discuss with the Hokage. You see, Naruto, based on what you explained to me earlier, I believe you're what's called a sensor-type ninja. Do you remember our discussion about them in class last semester? Iruka explained, pausing with his meal to give Naruto his full attention. Vaguely, Naruto admitted sheepishly, earning an exasperated sigh out of Iruka. Well, sensor-type ninja are normally able to mold their chakra in various ways to detect the chakra of others, and sometimes discern specific chakra signatures. Meaning they can tell individuals from one another just on their chakra alone. Hinata's clan, for instance, can see the chakra network of the body when they activate their Byakugan. It's an ability unique to the Hyuga. Iruka explained, noticing Naruto's confused look at the mention of the dojutsu. Anyway, that is how it is usually used. You, on the other hand, seem to be able to sense others' emotions, and in turn, it is having a physical effect on yourself. Simply put, you have a unique ability, and your lack of control over it overloaded your system. That's why you had such a bad reaction when you were around Sasuke today. Naruto nodded in understanding, absent-mindedly starting on his second helping of ramen. So those sensations he'd been feeling were other people's emotions. What a weird power. But it was cool that he and Hinata have another thing in common, being sensor-type ninja. These scrolls, Irika went on lightly patting the bundle with his free hand to emphasize his point, are going to be your homework until you're able to get your abilities under control. What? That's so unfair, Irika-sensei. Tebeo, Naruto complained, momentarily forgetting his ramen, only to earn a sharp look from his teacher causing him to quiet down. Naruto, your ability is very unique. Honestly, I'd never even heard of something like this before, it is that rare. Are you subconsciously flooding your system with chakra? Are you at risk of depleting your chakra reserves because of this? Today you got sick and ended up fainting. What's to say next time you're by yourself, or in the middle of training? What if you get hurt with no one there to help you? Or worse? The Chunin scolded soberly, causing Naruto to look down guiltily, playing with his noodles as Irika continued to calmly lecture him. In fact, the ability is so unheard of that the only written information I could find on it was a brief mention of the Shodame's wife, Senju Mito, formerly known as Uzumaki Mito, having it. At the mention of his surname, Naruto snapped his head up to see Irika give him an apologetic smile. Unfortunately, since Yuzushiogeku's destruction during the Second Shinobi World War and your parents' own demise the night of the Kyuubi's attack, Kanehigakure is fresh out of adult Uzumaki that could have helped you learn to control your abilities. Now Naruto completely abandoned his food. So what? He'd inherited some rare ability that could potentially be a risk to his life, and anyone that could teach him how to properly use it had already died a long time ago. His melancholic thoughts were interrupted by the weight of a hand resting heavily on his head, ruffling his hair. Slowly Naruto looked up, seeing Irika smile at him reassuringly. This is why I tried to find all the scrolls I could that explained the basic and advanced theories behind sensor-type abilities, behavior studies, and basic psychology. I'm not expecting you to go at this alone, get it down in one night, or even 1 month, so don't worry. We'll figure this out together. You're my precious student after all. As Irika finished his deeply moving assurance, Naruto choked back tears, quickly going back to shoveling down his food. Sure, it sucked he was going to have more work than his other classmates, but in a way, Naruto guessed this is what it meant to belong to a clan. Based on Irika's explanation, Naruto bet that his peers belonging to prominent clans had tons of extra work they had to put in based on their own family's unique jutsu and abilities. Naruto himself didn't know much about the Uzumaki clan besides what he learned in school, which wasn't much. From what he remembered, they were the reason for the spiral on the Chunin vest and Konoha's default shinobi uniforms. The clan had also been closely allied with Konoha, at least before the majority of the clan had been wiped out close to 3 decades ago. After the duo finished their meal, Irika held out the scrolls to Naruto. For now, I want you to read these. The first is information that Sandaime-sama felt would be beneficial for you to learn about the Uzumaki clan and Mito-sama. He, after all, knew her personally since his own sensei had been Naidame-sama, Shodaime-sama's brother. The boy was shocked to hear that. Just how old is Ji-chan? The second is a modified meditation exercise to help build up your mental fortitude, the spiritual part of your chakra exercises. It also gives an introduction for recognizing and noting the differences between basic emotions to get you started. The last one is the introduction to your new after-school course, where you'll learn what it means to be a sensor-type ninja, with augmented chakra control exercises to get you started. I'll be instructing you in the basics every day after school starting next week. For now, I want you to read over those scrolls throughout the rest of this week, and please try not to be careless with them. Naruto felt very overwhelmed and could almost feel his brain frying. Academics had never been his strong point. He was more of a tactile learner in general, hence why taijutsu had been his highest grade the previous semester. Irika chuckled, patting Naruto on the head once again, gaining the boy's attention. Don't worry, Naruto, we'll get through this together, remember? Hell, if you end up getting this ability under control, I can see it becoming a great asset for you once you make genin, and even on your path to becoming Hokage. Remember, there are no shortcuts, you can only get there by putting in the hard work. At the mention of his dream, Naruto's resolve strengthened, and he nodded in appreciation. Thank you, Irika-sensei. I won't let you down. Databeo, he promised, hugging the scrolls tightly before hurriedly heading home to get started on his specialized homework. The next day found Naruto half asleep with bags under his eyes as he slumped down in his seat waiting for class to start. It felt like he hadn't slept a wink the night before, not for lack of trying. The sleep-deprived Uzumaki hadn't expected to have terrifying nightmares every time he closed his eyes. The only recurring theme was Sasuke's hate-filled gaze being directed at him. Sometimes he was laughing evilly, sometimes he was shouting curses at him, but always his eyes were cold and scary. Had it just been a residual effect of yesterday's episode? At the moment Naruto didn't know, and he was too tired to care. Ayana, Naruto-kun, are you alright? Are you still sick? Hinata asked hesitantly as she took her seat next to him. Naruto glanced over at her briefly from where he rested his chin on the table before returning his gaze forward lazily. I'm fine, Hinata-chan. I just didn't get much sleep last night. It seems I'm a sensor type and overloaded my ability yesterday. It's nothing to worry about, Iruka-sensei is supposed to be helping me learn to control it," he grumbled, trying his best not to take his foul mood out on the timid girl. "Well, if you're still not feeling well, I can take notes for you today. I'm sure Iruka-sensei will understand," Hinata offered, bringing her fingers together out of nervous reflex. Naruto let out a relieved sigh, sagging deeper in his seat as he relaxed. "Thanks, Hinata-chan. You're a lifesaver," Tebeo. Naruto yawned, folding his arms under his head as a pillow. "It's okay, Naruto-kun. I'm also a sensor type, so I can sympathize," Naruto murmured incoherently and replied before drifting off into peaceful slumber blanketed in warmth and sunshine. Throughout the rest of the week, Naruto's nightmares continued, his disrupted sleep having a noticeably negative impact on his performance in class. Naruto had to assure Iruka that he hadn't been staying up late at night trying to work on his home studies and explain to him about the nightmares. Iruka was more patient with him after that discussion. As long as Naruto made sure to give him a report at the start of class, confirming his sleep schedule and the frequency he ended up waking up throughout the night. The first week came and went leading into Naruto's after-school studies with Iruka. They weren't doing anything special yet since Naruto was still recovering from his lack of sleep, and Iruka thought it more prudent that he recognized what he felt first, which required being able to recognize different emotions. Naruto thought emotions were simple. You had happy, sad, and mad. Simple was easy, simple was what he preferred. His sensei disagreed, and even pointed out to him that recognizing more complex emotions could help him in combat situations once he started his ninja career. Naruto slowly learned the basics of human behavior and psychology, struggling to grasp the advanced subject. He figured Iruka wanted to pound these skills into him more so that Naruto didn't end up caught off guard or deceived again, but the material was difficult to grasp. Naruto would think he figured something out only to be told differently, much to his disappointment. It was easier when Iruka broke down the big words and confusing definitions using examples Naruto could pull from his own experiences. Such as when he compared Hinata to ramen, that had meant she was someone special that Naruto cherished. Iruka also tried to break down the different levels of hatred Naruto had come to experience, though that had been an uncomfortable session for both teacher and pupil. Naruto didn't understand why he was hated so much by so many. Iruka seemed to know, but either wouldn't or couldn't tell him. Maybe it was because he was the sole surviving Uzumaki in Konoha? If his sensor ability was that amazing, maybe people felt threatened by it. The scroll Naruto read describing his crippled clan made them seem amazing: strong life forces, long lifespans, bigger chakra pools, an improved healing factor, and higher stamina levels. Yep, Naruto was proud to count himself among the remnants of the Uzumaki clan. He'd learned that they even had woven ties with the Senju clan, the clan the Shodame and Nidame hailed from. That meant somewhere in his family tree he could be related to some of the Hokage. How awesome was that? Then again, some of the whispers he would overhear from time to time made it seem like it was his fault the Yondaime died. Naruto thought that was stupid though, since he was born the same day the Yondaime died. What could he have done? Drooled on the man to death? Adults were confusing. Naruto chose not to dwell on it, instead, focusing on his exercises. After 2 weeks of working closely with Iruka, he started to notice an improvement, but he didn't know if that was from the lessons or avoiding Sasuke. Naruto had of course learned partially what happened to Sasuke from listening to gossip in the village. It seemed over the summer his clan had been massacred in one night, leaving him the lone survivor. That meant he was now an orphan like Naruto. A small part of the lonely youth was happy there was someone else like him in the village, but he was also sad since that meant Sasuke was alone at the end of the day just like him as well. Being able to recognize the emotions he was sensing from everyone was starting to greatly help Naruto, granted he wasn't even close to controlling his ability in the slightest. At least he could recognize people to avoid and who was approachable. This made his time in the academy run more smoothly, helping him avoid unnecessary confrontation after school. Naruto was about to figure out he could gauge what he believed to be people's true intentions by getting a rise out of them, which he usually tested out with his pranks, much to Iruka's frustration. The weeks flew by and it was now the time of the year when the seasons started their shift once again. Naruto was looking out the window noticing the first signs of fall on the trees outside. His birthday was at the end of the week, and he didn't know how to feel about it. Normally it was just another day of the week, granted Naruto was usually sadder than usual as he sat alone in his apartment at night, but that was about it. As a familiar heaviness filled the room, the despondent blonde shifted his blue eyes to lock onto the dark-haired boy who sat a couple of rows in front of him before quickly returning to the scenery outside. Sasuke's presence had become less suffocating over the past month and a half but was still distracting. Iruka had reintroduced them to spars and other collaborative drills, keeping a watchful eye on Naruto the whole time. The Uzumaki brat was quite proud of himself that he was able to detach himself from the Uchiha's emotions, separating them from himself enough to focus on the task at hand, but it was taxing to practice for a long period of time. Naruto noticed that if he riled up Sasuke it would disrupt the heaviness he gave off, but would also invoke the ire of his fangirls. It was a double-edged sword, and he really didn't like getting hit by a bunch of bloodthirsty girls, especially ones training to become lethal warriors. A warm presence interrupted his thoughts, causing Naruto to turn in time to see Hinata making her way to her seat. Naruto was ecstatic to learn that the warmth he felt from her meant that she was happy, and since she got that way when he interacted with her, that meant Naruto made her happy. He was important to her in some way, she valued him. Iruka had explained to him that he should always try to bring this feeling out in people and that it greatly benefited Hinata in particular, though he never elaborated as to why. Based on the rare mentions Naruto had been able to pull out of the girl, combined with his current studies, he surmised that her home life was most likely not a happy one. Even if her situation was slightly different, Naruto came to realize Hinata probably looked forward to their shared time in the academy just as much as he did. "Good morning, Hinata-chan." "Databeo." He greeted enthusiastically, beaming at the shy girl, inciting her to blush furiously. Naruto didn't understand why Hinata would continuously and increasingly act standoffish when he tried to interact with her, but he could sense that she was happy all the same, so he just rolled with it. She was weird, but she was nice. "Gee, good morning to you as well." And Naruto-kun, Hinata stammered back, fidgeting bashfully. Naruto looked at her intently, growing bewildering body language. Hinata seemed hesitant and struggling internally with something. After sitting next to her for close to a year, Naruto had learned to be quiet and patient when Hinata acted like this. Usually, when she worked out whatever issues she was struggling with, he got a reward, like when she shared her bento with him on occasion. Hinata finally mustered up her courage, reaching into her bag to grab a scroll, thrusting it under Naruto's nose. It was lined with his favorite shade of orange and tied closed with a bright red cord. "I know it's a little early and presumptuous of me. I'm sorry, I asked Iruka-sensei Ane to please wait to open it until you get home." Hinata squeaked, closing her eyes and trembling, her anxiety getting the better of her. Naruto nodded slowly, absently taking the scroll from the overwhelmed kunoichi in training, putting the gift securely in his bag. Thanks, Hinata-chan. I don't know why you decided to give me a gift, but I really appreciate it." "Tabeo. I look forward to opening it later," the confused boy stated in a hushed but delighted voice. Hinata nodded numbly before looking away, hiding her face behind her hands. Naruto smiled, one of his rare true smiles, as he felt the flood of warmth shine from the girl. He didn't have the heart to tell her the details of his sensor abilities just yet. He wanted to get it under control first. A part of him wondered if that was a bad thing to do, but Naruto shrugged the thought away. It wasn't like he was using her or anything. It just helped him be a better friend. After another routine day in the academy, Naruto wrapped up his extra lessons with Iruka, heading home as fast as his short legs could carry him. This was surprisingly fast with the chakra control exercises he had started recently. Once in the confines of his apartment, Naruto promptly sat down on the Genkan, taking out the scroll Hinata had gifted him that morning to examine it. The first thing he perceived was a note attached to the scarlet cord. Carefully, Naruto detached and started reading the folded paper. "Open me on a flat surface. I'm a storage scroll." Further following the note's instructions, Naruto knelt on the step of his entryway, carefully unfurling the scroll and charging the manuscript with the smallest ounce of chakra he could muster. With a small pop and a puff of smoke, Naruto looked at the item now appearing in front of him. It was a bundle of miniature sunflowers, with petals of vibrant yellow close to the same shade as Naruto's very own blonde locks. The houseplant rested in an Uzumaki red ceramic pot, even sporting the signature spiral carved into the side of the container. Inspecting the gift closer, Naruto found another note attached. Perplexed, he grabbed the second, more colorful note to read it. "Happy birthday, Naruto-kun. Thank you for being my friend. I hope you enjoy the gift, it reminded me of you. Hinata." Naruto reread the note multiple times, never moving from his spot on the floor. Someone had given him a birthday present? Someone thanked him for being their friend? Someone thought of him this much? Slowly, with a shaking hand, Naruto set the note down and picked up the potted plant, hugging it carefully to his chest. Overwrought with pleasant feelings for the second time that year, Naruto sat on the floor crying his heart out. If his new abilities were the price he had to pay for this happiness, he would gladly endure it. Autumn had hit full swing in the land of fire. Most of the trees were ablaze with Naruto's favorite colors, bringing the now 8-year-old boy much delight as he walked down one of Konoha's more scenic roads that ran parallel to one of the few rivers cutting through the village. For the past few weeks since his birthday, Naruto had taken to walking down this path, catching the familiar sight of a lone dark-haired Moros youth sitting on the small dock overlooking the river. Sasuke always seemed to be there without fail every evening with a faraway look on his face. The Uchiha had caught Naruto's interest since his presence became more tolerable. Why was he always alone? Yeah, he was now an orphan like Naruto, but unlike the Uzumaki, people seemed to pity Sasuke. He was popular in school, and yet kept everyone at arm's length. The only time his aura would change was when the youth was preoccupied asserting his dominance over Naruto, much to the blonde's annoyance. It pissed him off a bit that Sasuke seemed to express joy calling him a useless loser all the time, making him eat dirt, or just generally putting Naruto down in some way. It was like Sasuke had set his sights on making sure Naruto wasn't allowed to show him up, or just simply be allowed to stop being the dead last of their class. In another life, Naruto probably would have let Sasuke be, but having to personally experience the amount of pain the Uchiha was in every day at the academy was hard to ignore. Once he was able to look past the hate and anger. All that was left was a painful sensation. It was as if someone had stabbed him in the heart with an ice-cold kunai, slowly twisting it. Naruto didn't understand how Sasuke could tolerate the feeling every day. It was personally driving him insane. Coming to his decision, Naruto made his way down to the dock until he stood behind the focus of his current contemplation. Go away, Uzuritanki. I'm not in the mood, Sasuke stated calmly, never taking his gaze from the calm waters. Naruto's brow twitched in irritation as he felt the impulse to kick the off the dock. No, he was better than that. Taking a breath, the blonde slowly regained control of his temper. Iruka had been trying to teach him to not react to goading so much as it could be a danger once out in the field. Too bad, team, I need to talk to you. Oh? And what could you have to say that would be worth listening to, Edo? Okay, team, I tried to go about it the nice way. You have no one to blame but yourself. Sorry, Iruka-sensei. Naruto thought as a sadistic grin crept up his whisker-marked face. In one swift motion, he planted his foot at the base of Sasuke's back, shoving the unsuspecting boy with gusto into the river. He was rewarded with a spluttering aghast Uchiha who had quickly surfaced and looked ready to murder. What the hell? What's your problem, Dobe? Sasuke shouted as he scrambled to grab the edge of the dock. As I said, team, I need to talk to you, Naruto answered calmly, leaning down, holding his hand out to help the now drenched boy back up onto the dock. And as I said, I'm not in the mood, Uzuritanki. Sasuke growled, grabbing Naruto by the wrist and yanking him into the river, simultaneously succeeding in pulling himself back onto the deck in the same fluid motion. Naruto yelped and was thankful that the temperatures were still mild so the river wasn't as cold as it could have been. Twisting around in the water, he kicked back up to the surface. Sputtering as he wiped the water from his eyes, Naruto glared at Sasuke, all the while struggling to try to climb back up on the dock, which he found difficult, especially with his waterlogged clothes. Sasuke watched him struggle for a few minutes, seeming to enjoy the torment he'd inflicted on the smaller boy. Finally, the Uchiha rolled his dark eyes, grabbing the back of Naruto's jacket, and using his momentum, swung Naruto back onto the deck, falling on his rear in the process. Naruto for his part rolled around on the ground whining in muffled pain, holding his face that he had the bad luck of landing on. After taking a moment for both boys to regain their composure, they sat across from each other sporting matching glares and looking like a pair of half-drowned cats. Well? I don't have all day, Dobe. Spit it out, Sasuke demanded impatiently, earning a more intense frown from Naruto who furrowed his brow. I heard what happened to your clan, team. The blonde explained calmly after swallowing down his rising temper. The dark-eyes boy could be insufferable on his best days and appeared even more so right now. So? What's that got to do with you? Sasuke growled, his presence sharply gaining some weight, causing Naruto to fight the urge to fidget. This conversation was quickly becoming uncomfortable before it even started. Well, if you haven't noticed, you're not the only orphan in town to bail. I'm kind of your senpai in that department. Naruto retorted with a rueful snort, flashing the slightly older boy a wry smile, hoping to diffuse some of the tension, but remaining unsuccessful. And? Your point? Sasuke hissed, narrowing his eyes, the loathsome feeling he gave off permeating the air like a thick, choking, invisible miasma. The hair on the back of Naruto's neck stood on end. The socially inept boy knew he was now entering dangerous territory, but retained his resolve. Naruto had to at least attempt to reach out to his fellow orphan, rubbing the back of his neck in a self-soothing motion to steel his nerves before the nervous boy continued. Well, I just thought it must get pretty boring hanging out down here all the time, Databale. And while I thought you might be lonely with your family no longer. Naruto's words were swiftly interrupted as he was knocked flat on his back, Sasuke sitting on his chest, pinning Naruto's arms under his knees. That was all the subdued boy was able to register before the first blow came down, leaving him dazed. It surprised Naruto how much power Sasuke put into his punch. It wasn't something he imagined a normal 8-year-old to be capable of. Then again, Sasuke wasn't a normal child. There was a reason he had the top grades of their class every semester after all. What? You saw we had some things in common? Sasuke snarled before landing the second blow, whipping Naruto's face to the side from the force. Grunting, the blue-eyed boy's vision became obscured by a sudden onset of stars. You thought we could be friends or something? The larger boy roared, knocking Naruto's face into the opposite direction. Naruto grit his teeth, quickly understanding where the situation was headed. I messed up, Hinata. Let me spell something out for you, Dobe. I'll even make it simple enough for your small brain to understand. I am nothing like you. I do not want to be your friend. Much to Naruto's chagrin, Sasuke was right. He really did spell it out simple. With each word, the blonde had been rewarded with another blow to his face. He wasn't sure if Sasuke was still speaking or just decided to continue to beat him mercilessly with no signs of stopping anytime soon. All the while Naruto just took it, only expressing the occasional grunt as he endured the onslaught. After all, he had been the presumptuous one. Naruto found his loneliness to be personally unbearable. Creating bonds had been helping him, so he thought companionship could help the other tortured boy as well. It hadn't been his intent, but at least it seemed Sasuke's feelings of anguish were being alleviated with each punch. If the objective was accomplished, did the method matter? Naruto couldn't hear anything except a dull ringing now, and his vision was starting to get blurry. His peripherals darkened around the edges. The punches were starting to hurt less. Was his face going numb? I wonder if he's getting tired yet. Suddenly the beatdown stopped as Sasuke was pulled off of Naruto. The battered boy couldn't make out the adult in the evening light, but he saw splashes of faded black and green, the Konohagakure standard shinobi fatigues. The newcomer was at the very least a chunin, if not a jonin. I think he's had enough. Don't you? Came a man's voice in a lazy playful tone over the incoherent angry ramblings of a still irate, partially shrieking Sasuke. This guy's presence feels familiar, Naruto thought sluggishly as he strained his eyes, willing them to focus, only catching a flash of silver, of what he assumed to be hair, before finally blacking out. Naruto, it's too late. Nothing you can say will change me. I'm going to kill you and every last person in your beloved village. It's time to make your choice. Kill me and become a hero, or die at my hand and become another one of my victims. Naruto found himself in pain, struggling to breathe. Everything was in shades of red, his chest hurt so much. He coughed, blood spilling from his mouth. What was that noise? It was like 1,000 birds screaming. Reaching up to find the source of his pain, Naruto felt something warm and wet. Looking down, he saw an object protruding from his rib cage where his heart should be. What was going on? Was that someone's arm? Was he going to die? Naruto struggled to focus, trying to scream only to choke on more blood. He heard someone's laugh, a dark, demented sort of laugh. Looking up, Naruto struggled to make out the face of his would-be executioner, only to start to fall into a body of water. All Naruto could see was varying shades of crimson. He couldn't move. He was going to drown. Naruto struggled to try to swim for the surface. He needed air. Bolting up, Naruto found himself awake, breathing heavily, the nightmare still fresh on his mind. Frantically, the panic-stricken boy checked his person to find he was still in one piece. Breathing out a sigh of relief, Naruto flopped back down to look up at a ceiling. The last the blonde remembered he'd been outside, and at the mercy of a very pissed Sasuke. Naruto shuddered, not wanting to experience anything like that anytime soon. Looking around, the confused youth realized he was in his bedroom. But how did he get here? Oh? So you're awake? That's a relief. Naruto strained his neck to locate the source of the voice, finding a man he didn't recognize sitting at his shibudai, reading a book. Naruto wasn't sure if it was the familiar presence the man gave off or the repeated blows to his head, but strangely, the injured boy didn't feel alarmed seeing a stranger in his home. Never mind relaxing comfortably in Naruto's bedroom, as if he lived there. The man in question was dressed in classic faded black Konoha shinobi fatigues with a green flak vest signifying he was of chunin rank, or higher. Naruto couldn't see his face because of the book the man had been reading, but he spotted gravity-defying silver hair. Who are you, Akin? Naruto asked sleepily with a hint of curiosity while attempting to sit up, only to be gently forced back down. The young boy blinked in surprise and confusion. Hadn't the old guy just been leisurely resting on the floor? So fast. You need to stay right where you are. Don't try to move just yet. You took quite a serious beating. The senior shinobi explained softly with a smile, or what Naruto assumed to be a smile from what little he could see of the adult's concealed face. The strange man wore a skin-tight black face covering that ended midway up the bridge of his nose and had obscured his left eye with a hitate. With how close the man was, Naruto could get a better feel of his aura and scent. He seemed happy, a little sad, and had an undercurrent of anger? He also smelled familiar for some reason, but Naruto couldn't place the scent anywhere off the top of his head. Not that he could think straight at the moment anyway. With a defeated huff, Naruto retook his position, getting a bit more comfortable in his bed, glowering up at the strange man. You still haven't told me your name, Akin. Databeo. He loudly complained impatiently, before wincing as the motion caused pain to sear through his jaw. Quickly Naruto snapped up his hands, grabbing his tenderly swollen face to find it concealed behind some bandages. As he took a moment to take notice of his current condition, the gentle scent of an herbal compress reached his nose. It would seem the stranger had taken care of him while he was out. Upon this realization, Naruto slowly reopened his eyes to study the newcomer with surprise and gratitude. No, I haven't. The man responded with a chuckle, heading into the kitchen before soon returning to Naruto's side with a glass of water. The perplexing individual held the water out with what looked to be some medicine. Here, take this. It'll help you feel better. The bewildered boy nodded, taking the items into his hands, then proceeding to carefully wash down the medicinal packet, assessing the throbbing pain in his jaw muscles, cheek, and jawbone, around his eyes, basically his skull in general. Naruto didn't know why. The man seemed a bit more patient and easygoing than Irika-sensei, but instead of arguing, the boy felt more compelled to follow the adult's instructions as if it was the most natural thing in the world. He felt like the mere thought of acting up was unthinkable. Naruto did, however, never take his eyes off the man, though more out of general curiosity than real caution. Once the one-eyed shinobi was satisfied with Naruto's compliance, he took the glass back, setting it on the nearby table before squatting down to eye level, his expression taking a more serious tone. Now, do you mind telling me why you allowed that boy to hit you without ever lifting a finger? Why didn't you try to defend yourself? Naruto looked away guiltily. Normally he'd argue, or act up, to distract from being put on the spot, but oddly continued to behave. It didn't help that the man seemed so familiar that it was driving Naruto crazy, like grasping for a word on the tip of one's tongue. The injured youth could swear he knew this man but had never seen or heard anyone like him before. "It was my fault, Tebeo," I said something carelessly. "He felt better when hitting me, so why not let him?" Naruto remarked with a shrug, earning a strained look from the intriguing man. "I see, and what would you have done if I hadn't stepped in?" "I dunno, wait for team to get tired or bored, I guess?" Naruto answered with another shrug. This earned the foolish boy a soft chuckle from his older guest, followed by an exasperated, long, drawn-out sigh. "I see, so you honestly felt you deserved to be hit until he got tired, Just what could you have said to deserve something so extreme?" "I told him we were the same. Tebeo. Then team decided to teach me that I was mistaken." "Well, after his lesson, do you find yourself agreeing with him?" Naruto thought for a moment before slowly shaking his head. "No, we're both alone after school, with no one waiting for us at home. We're both orphans without any family around. We're both training to become shinobi." The stranger lifted his hand, signaling Naruto to stop, so he could have a chance to interject. "However, are you aware that there is a difference between starting with nothing and having a chance to gain something, versus having something, only to end up having nothing?" Naruto just stared at him blankly. No, he couldn't relate to that. For as long as Naruto could remember, he never had anything like that in his life. No one was waiting for him to return home at night. No one was there to celebrate holidays with him. No one was usually there to provide care and comfort when he was sick or in pain. For most of Naruto's short life, he'd been denied basic human contact and interactions. At least, until this past year. It was hard at the start, but people were slowly opening up to him. Was Sasuke's pain that different from his? Was trying to be Sasuke's friend a mistake? That other boy, Sasuke, he's in the process of grieving. Grieving? What's that? Imagine if Ichiraku suddenly closed and would never open again. What? No way. That'll never happen, Databeo. Naruto exclaimed, following up with a small whine of pain that shifted into a whimper, massaging his throbbing jaw gingerly as he waited for the sensation to pass. You never know. Now, imagine that feeling of losing something so important in your life that you can't think of living without it, but the pain is 100 times worse. The silver-haired man explained, giving Naruto a pointed look to drive the point home. The injured boy reflected on the scenario for a moment, looking down as he mulled over the stranger's words, awkwardly playing with the blanket resting across his lap. Naruto tried to imagine losing the few precious people that had become a crucial part of his life. Awkwardly giving the lecturing adult a sideways glance, throughout his lesson, the man's presence had never changed. He exuded a consistent level of sadness that the young sense continued to find vaguely familiar. Maybe it was that feeling that caused the child to remain for the most part contemplative and respectful? Is it like that feeling in your chest that never seems to go away? Naruto finally asked, quietly pointing towards the man's heart, earning a hesitant nod from the masked shinobi. Naruto hummed and thought, looking up at the ceiling. So that's what that feeling was. Will he be like that forever? No, however, everyone handles grief differently, and some take longer to heal than others. Some never recover at all. It's a very complicated thing. Is there a way to make him better? Only time will tell. Until then, try to give him some space. You may want to volunteer as his punching bag, but that won't help either of you in the long run. So Akin, you gonna tell me your name yet? Naruto asked after a pause with a yawn, feeling a bit drowsy as the medicine started taking effect. Not today, was the only reply Naruto received as the shinobi returned to the kitchen. The now groggy child turned his head to watch the adult leave with a mixture of curiosity and irritation. Soon after, the man returned with a steaming bowl of something. The tall, lanky man sat down on the edge of the bed, being careful not to sit on the small boy. From his position, Naruto was able to look down into the bowl. Its mystery contents seemed to be some type of rice porridge. Here, you're too banged up to eat your usual dinner choice. Careful, it might still be a little hot. The stubbornly anonymous man warned, patiently waiting for Naruto to residuate himself to eat his meal. The duo sat in silence as Naruto hesitantly sipped the brothy substance, nursing his aching jaw. The blonde hoped he healed enough overnight. Naruto didn't want to admit it, but the stranger had made a point with his shared wisdom earlier. What was he going to do if it continued to hurt too much to eat? It's not like he usually had anyone over to cook for him. It appeared this year was just full of life lessons being learned in a hard and often painful way. After Naruto finished his meal, the mystery man took his bowl to the kitchen, while the boy made himself more comfortable in his bed. He tried to fight off the drowsiness but soon lost the battle, entering into a dreamless slumber. Naruto was so out of it he didn't even stir. He was tucked in more securely. Kakashi sighed, shaking his head as he closed Naruto's bedroom door. It had taken all the self-control the Jonin could muster not to harm the Uchiha brat. How dare he do that to his sensei's son? If Naruto didn't possess an accelerated healing factor, Kakashi would most likely have given in to his impulses. The now Exanbi was still shaking with anger, remembering the sight of Naruto's bruised and bloodied face. The Hokage for his part disappointed Kakashi, choosing to only give Sasuke a slap on the wrist for the assault. His reasoning? Of course, Naruto's healing factor, and the petulant brat's grief surrounding the loss of his clan. The Jonin knew he couldn't retaliate. What concerned him even more so was that Naruto allowed himself to be beaten so harshly. Was Minato's son so desperate for companionship that he'd subject himself to mistreatment? Kakashi remembered the last incident he helped rescue Naruto from, involving some kid named Hibachi according to Irika. Hadn't his former subordinate informed him that Naruto was making normal friends now? Kakashi would need to have some words with Irika. He'd be damned if his sensei's legacy became the village whipping post. It was one thing to be irrationally neglectful, quite another to go after the boy with the intent of physical harm. However, a small part of Kakashi was grateful that at least the Kyuubi hadn't felt compelled to intervene. It would be difficult to protect Naruto from the village's ire if he inadvertently killed another child. There was also the concerning news of Naruto's sensor abilities. From what little the Hokage and Irika divulged, Naruto was able to sense others' emotions, maybe even individual chakra signatures. It was as if he inherited a balanced blend of his parents' abilities. Granted, they weren't fine-tuned just yet. Naruto was after all still a naive, innocent, and adorable cadet. Irika was trying his best to prepare Naruto for the life of a shinobi, but Kakashi could already predict some issues that would require a more deft hand. Glancing back at the doorway leading to the broken shinobi's last semblance of a family, he gripped his shaking fists to quell his rising anger once more. Dog bites caused by Niken weren't easy to track back to their owners, were they? Kakashi would have to discuss it with Pakken. With that last thought in mind, the silver-haired shinobi quickly cleaned up his young charge's kitchen, exiting the apartment, while absently formulating his plan. Kakashi was after all a very patient man. The next morning Naruto awoke to feel his pain greatly reduced. Hesitantly, he manipulated his jaw, relieved to find it didn't hurt anymore. The young Uzumaki let out a happy sigh, thanking his ancestors for the healing factor he'd inherited before heading to the bathroom to inspect the leftover damage. After the sun-kissed blonde removed the badges and washed away remnants of his herbal compress, all that was left was a pair of already fading black eyes. Naruto wasn't too concerned. From previous experience he knew they'd be back to normal before lunchtime, if not sooner. Grinning cheekily, he went to work preparing for school, getting himself breakfast before heading out the door. Once in class, Naruto ignored the side glances he got from his classmates, quickly heading up the steps to his seat where a concerned Hinata watched him with shock and worry. "And Naruto-kun? Ayano, what happened to you?" she asked fretfully, earning a nonchalant shrug from Naruto. I had a disagreement with Sasuke yesterday." "Oh, if you don't mind, what kind of disagreement?" And so Naruto explained to Hinata what had happened. Albeit, glossing over some details, such as how badly Sasuke had actually beaten him, having to be rescued from the said beatdown, and his sensor abilities. Throughout his story, Hinata seemed pensive, yet completely tuned into his words. "And so, that's what happened. What do you think, Hinata-chan?" Naruto asked, watching her dig into her bag to pull out a small jar that she then passed to him. "Here, Naruto-kun, this cream should help to reduce the swelling. It's my clan's special healing ointment," she offered. Naruto nodded in understanding and appreciation as he unsecured the lid to begin applying the mixture to his face. "As for what I think? Ayano, I think I can understand both Naruto-kun's intent and Sasuke-san's feelings. At least a little. And Naruto-kun was just trying to help someone you saw in pain. As for Sasuke-san, grief can make people do strange things." Hinata paused, shuffling nervously before noticing Naruto was finished with her ointment, so she returned it to her pack. "For instance, I'm currently the heiress to the Hyuga clan. Just after my 3rd birthday, I had been kidnapped by a ninja from Kumo. As a result, my uncle was killed. Since then my father has been more strict in my training, and my cousin, in his grief, has blamed me for the incident ever since." Naruto watched her in awestruck silence. It was rare for Hinata to mention her family life, at all, but to share something so personal and tragic just ate at the boy. He could tell through her story how much it hurt her to bring up the memories, let alone speak about her strained familial relationships. Without really thinking about it, he leaned forward, embracing Hinata in a firm hug, earning him a startled gasp in surprise from the shy girl. "And Naruto-kun?" After a short pause, Naruto let go of the now red-faced Hinata, flashing a bright and cocky smile. "I think I understand better. Tebeo." "Thanks, Hinata-chan. Though, I guess if you're some sort of heiress, maybe I should be calling you Haim-sama?" He snickered playfully, enjoying how her blush seemed to bloom and darken, turning almost purple before Hinata proceeded to slump in her seat, having fainted. Hinata-chan?" Naruto cried out in surprise and shock. "Oh, Kami! Shurmata! I killed her!" Several weeks had passed since Naruto's confrontation with Sasuke. At school, he gave the Uchiha a wide berth unless they were partnered for joint exercises. After school, Naruto no longer saw the dark-haired boy sitting despondently at the dock in the evenings, but he wasn't sure if the change in the seasons was more to blame than anything else. Naruto had heard a rumor that shortly before winter the Uchiha had been attacked by a feral dog or something. As it were, both boys seemed to have an unspoken agreement, pretending the incident never occurred, and none were the wiser. Naruto had been considering giving the other boy a Rinne present in the form of a prank before their week-long break. However, that could wait. Currently, the Rinne festival itself was at the forefront of Naruto's mind, or at least what followed it, Hinata's birthday. Ever since Hinata had gone out of her way to get Naruto such a thoughtful gift for his birthday, he was hellbent on paying her back. Iruka had told him when her birthday took place, and Naruto had been agonizing over ideas ever since. He didn't have much money, so the orphan couldn't get a gift as awesome as the one Hinata had gotten him. Naruto hoped that by cutting back on meals at Ichiraku's, except when Iruka-sensei treated him of course, he'd be able to scrounge some funds for something. The fretting boy's second issue was what to get her. It wasn't like Hinata needed anything. She came from an esteemed family. He didn't want to get her flowers again since all the wild ones were dormant during this time of year, and it was too embarrassing to go buy some from the Yamanaka's store, especially with how nosy Ino could be. Naruto was at a loss. He thrashed about in his bed, voicing out his frustrations with a yell before looking at his clock. It was late. He needed to get some sleep. The subdued boy crawled underneath the covers, hugging his pillow close to his body, slowly starting to drift to sleep. Wait, that's it! Attempting to jump out of bed, Naruto ended up tangled in his bedding, face planting on the hard floor. He remained undeterred, scrambling upright, switching the light on, then grabbing a pencil and some paper, making some rough sketches so he wouldn't forget his idea in the morning. Once Naruto was satisfied, he clambered back into bed to drift happily to sleep. Hey, don't say I never helped you with anything, kid. Over the next 2 weeks, Naruto worked meticulously on the secret gift. He managed to acquire scrap materials at the local craft store for a discount. Of course, Naruto found that his henge had come in handy for these excursions. It had become a good training exercise. On the final day before they'd be released for the week of the festival, Naruto examined the following touches on his creations. He couldn't place the inspiration for the initial choice but was still proud of what he accomplished. Naruto managed to create 2 plush spheres decorated with features and attributes to make any girl squeal with delight. Or at least that was the reaction he was aiming for. The first was a smiling light orange fox with whisker marks, reminiscent of his own, and reddish-orange accents. The second was a blue, almost black rabbit with a sleepy face sewn using shimmery silver thread to pop against the dark fabric. On the bottom of both, Naruto had sewn matching Uzumaki Swirl Clan patches. The fox received the classic red, while the rabbit possessed the less common, more formal, white. Naruto didn't know why he felt like adding his clan insignia, but at the time thought it seemed right. Inspecting the plush creatures one last time, Naruto nodded in satisfaction, deciding to grab the strange scroll Iruka helped him obtain. Since Naruto didn't have the money to afford something like that, Iruka worked out a deal with him, where he'd promised to show up to class consistently, at least for the rest of the year. It was a small sacrifice to pay. Iruka even let him get a similarly designed scroll to the one Hinata had given him for his birthday, though this one was lined with lavender and paired with a gold cord. Carefully, Naruto put the gifts in place, adding his handwritten card. Reading over the instructions Iruka had written him once more, he proceeded to seal the items. After finishing, the giddy boy put the scroll in his bag and got ready to leave for school. Since his scarf had gotten ruined the previous winter, the Sandame gave Naruto his New Year bonus early, allowing the boy to get a proper coat. It was cool too. It was his favorite shade of orange, blue across the shoulders and waistband, with a broad creamy white collar. Naruto made sure to buy it a little bigger than his current size so that he'd have room to grow into it. He wanted to keep the jacket as long as possible. Naruto was planning to add some custom touches, but so far all he managed to add was the default red Uzumaki clan patch on the back. Once Naruto was properly dressed, he hurried out into the winter weather racing to school. After he was situated in the classroom, he fidgeted restlessly with barely contained excitement. Would Hinata enjoy his gift? Would she find it too girly for a boy to make such things? Would she think he was weird? Naruto was brought out of his thoughts by the subject herself taking a seat next to him. Good morning, Hinata-chan. The giddy boy greeted in a sing-song voice. The girl in turn blushed, returning the greeting with a soft murmur. Quickly glancing around the room to make sure they didn't have a gawking audience, Naruto stealthily pulled out the scroll. Looking away innocently, he handed it to the now taken aback Hinata. For your birthday. Since, well, Naruto trailed off with a blush, becoming shy from the situation himself. After he felt Hinata lift the scroll from his outstretched hand, Naruto stole a glance over to the heiress. She was blushing but held a small delicate smile on her face. Naruto had felt the warmth from her aura so much that he had grown accustomed to it, but the actual smile was still a rarity expressed by the shy girl. He was awestruck and made a promise to himself to try to earn that smile more often. Thank you, Naruto-kun, you shouldn't have. It was no trouble, Hinata-chan. Naruto proclaimed with a broad toothy grin as he kicked back in his seat. I hope you enjoy it. I worked really hard. I heard homemade gifts make the best gifts, Databeo. If Naruto-kun made it, I'm sure it will be perfect, Hinata mumbled quietly, hugging the scroll close to herself. Naruto watched her as his face felt more heated. He wasn't sure if she meant to say that out loud or more to herself. It gave him a tingly feeling in his chest and made him feel a little lightheaded. After a long pause, Naruto scratched the back of his head, nodding awkwardly. The rest of their morning was spent in comfortable silence. Naruto decided that day that it was indeed worth it to be in class more consistently. At least if it meant he got more time with Hinata, that is. As winter turned into spring, the young ninja in training continued their time at the academy. Naruto found himself enjoying his time with Hinata every day, especially the mornings, where they could catch up with each other. They rarely socialized with each other during lunch, and never saw each other outside of class. Naruto had attempted, but Hinata's caretaker, Ko, would always just pull her along, admonishing her for associating with, as he put it, that delinquent Uzumaki. It was a rather polite way to refer to Naruto, all things considered. All in all, their mornings were a precious time for the energetic boy. After school, Naruto's extra lessons with Iruka-sensei continued. He was now able to recognize basic emotions easily, and even some of the more complex ones. Naruto still struggled with the bookwork aspect of the training but was determined to push himself. Unfortunately, he still wasn't able to figure out how to turn off the ability. So, instead, Naruto had been practicing the skill of separating the emotions from himself. This made it easier to focus. Naruto even found an additional use for the newly acquired skill, separating his own emotions when his classmates, or the villagers, were being particularly hurtful. It was easier to smile when he was able to lock the bad thoughts away and move on with the rest of his day. Oddly, Hinata still always seemed to be able to tell when something was off with him. Sometimes he'd feel guilty when she seemed to be sad when Naruto was forcing a smile, or when he chose to laugh along when others made fun of him. Naruto hoped that she'd understand where he was coming from at some point, but didn't hold it against her. It just made things simple for Naruto to smile and laugh instead of being angry or sad. It also made it easier for others to approach him, even if it was just to laugh at his expense. Since Naruto was spending a lot more time being prioritized by Iruka, and getting help with Hinata in the classroom, his grades improved slightly. Granted, he was still dead last, since as soon as his fellow students caught wind of his improvements, they started to apply themselves more. Even Shikamaru, Naruto, still held a failing grade in Genjutsu and found he still couldn't create a bunshin. At least he could consistently keep it the same size and shape, but as the Nara heir described it, the poor clone always looked like it had been fried. Even with his additional chakra control exercises, Naruto was still overloading the jutsu. The conundrum kept his grade low in ninjutsu, but at least Naruto wasn't completely failing that subject anymore. Naruto's best improvements had been in cooperation and classroom attitude. Even with him still acting up when paired with Sasuke, invoking retribution from the female portion of the class. The guys simply looked at him with indifference, but some were slowly warming up to his antics and pranks. Well, most of the guys except Sasuke. The jerk still passively went out of his way to put Naruto down at any given opportunity, throw insults his way, or blatantly ignoring him. It was Sasuke after all who got his title of dead last, or dobe, to stick, something Naruto vehemently hated him for. Naruto was happy Hinata didn't decide to become one of his fangirls. They just seemed to get worse with every passing year. Especially Haruno Sakura and Yamanaka Ino, those two girls were the worst. Sure, they were pretty, but they were also violent, mean, loud, and scary. Sakura in particular was always quick to throw punches if she felt irritated by Naruto's antics. The pink-haired Kijo didn't see the humor in Naruto's pranks. It wasn't his fault she always just so happened to be within close vicinity of his primary target at the academy, or that she usually became the unintended victim of said pranks. By the time Naruto's 9th birthday rolled around, the year had become mostly routine, becoming much less turbulent than the previous year. Unfortunately, it became harder during semester breaks. Fortunately, however, Iruka took notice of Naruto's anxiety around this time of the year, making an effort to randomly show up at the boy's home. Sometimes to take him out to Ichiraku's, or just checking in to make sure he wasn't falling behind on his studies and training. Naruto of course answered one time by showing off the improvements he made with his Oiroku no Jutsu with hilarious results. The mischievous youth had been able to make vast improvements to the distraction aim jutsu after he was able to produce a passable henge, sneaking into the women's side of the hot spring to study the kunoichi for reference. Naruto was careful not to do this too often though, because the women tended to beat him mercilessly the few times his disguise broke, or when a particularly skilled kunoichi noticed his henge. The Uzumaki brat remembered one particularly painful experience with a stern older woman that left him black and blue for a whole day. Naruto's pranks had also vastly improved, aiding his ability to avoid capture. On a good day, he was able to outmaneuver even the Ade and Biu. Iruka-sensei was always able to get him though, much to Naruto's frustration. He was going to figure out the man's secrets one day. Until then it was just fun making him faint and calling him Hanaji-sensei. Naruto was quickly making a name for himself in the village, forcing his existence to be somewhat acknowledged, even if it was for less than positive reasons. He could live with that for the time being. Naruto would worry about his reputation later, for now, he was enjoying his fun. Sometimes, all you can do is laugh to keep yourself from crying. It was now the start of Naruto's final year in the academy. The Uzumaki brat had matured very little over the past 2.5 years compared to his classmates. Even though he would be 12 at the end of the year, Naruto hadn't developed much since he was 9. By now all the boys towered over him, and even some of the girls already had a noticeable height difference in comparison to the pint-sized ninja trainee. Yes, Naruto's lack of growth quickly became a sore subject for him, and a new target of teasing from the other shinobi cadets. Academically, Naruto had improved in most areas except his core subjects. He still lacked the chakra control needed to efficiently handle or produce a genjutsu. His small stature increased his struggles in taijutsu twofold. For one, the boys were increasingly gaining a size and weight advantage over him, forcing Naruto to think of better strategies to outsmart them instead of overpowering them. The blonde-haired runt still remembered bitterly giving Inuzuka Kiba a black eye just the other day for calling him Naruchan, and he still didn't know if the jerk was calling him a baby or girly. With the girls, the whisker-faced youth found himself struggling internally with the thought of sparring with them. Thinking of striking any of them made him feel uncomfortable. Naruto had tried to talk to Iruka about it, but the instructor simply explained that he was doing himself and the girls a disservice. Kunoichi took advantage of such weaknesses propagated by misguided men, and Konoha's kunoichi in training needed to learn to handle opponents that were bigger and stronger than themselves. Although Naruto's size and weight made him comparative to most of the kunoichi, he at least outclassed most of them in taijutsu enough to hold on to his pride as a male. Funny enough, the one kunoichi in their class that excelled at taijutsu Naruto vehemently refused to spar, that, of course, being Hinata. As for ninjutsu, Naruto had managed to get most of the basics down to the point he was bored and would pull pranks on Iruka during evaluation exams, usually using variations of his Oiroku no Jutsu. The only academy-based jutsu that still eluded him was the basic Bunshin no Jutsu. Naruto just always seemed to overload it with chakra, at least according to Hinata and Shikamaru when he asked for tips. The thought of the frustrating jutsu put Naruto's stomach in knots thinking about the graduation exam at the end of the year. It seemed at the end of each semester the class would have a graduation exam evaluating the skills they'd learned over the 3 core subjects. Naruto was abhorrent in genjutsu, so the thought of passing that exam seemed laughable in his mind. He doubted he'd grow enough by the end of summer to pass the taijutsu exam. Naruto figured that test would probably be a sparring match like their normal evaluations. His only chance of passing would be to go against someone either around his height, or Shikamaru, at least if the Nara heir was feeling particularly unmotivated that day. No, the fretting Uzumaki's best chance of graduating was the pass with flying colors and ninjutsu. The only problem was he wasn't sure what jutsu they'd be asked to perform during the examination. Naruto knew without a doubt he was screwed if it ended up being the Bunshin no Jutsu. As for his extra lessons to gain reasonable control over his sensor abilities, Naruto had learned to identify several different emotions, and how to ignore or mentally distance himself from the auras emitted by others to the point he could function properly in the classroom. The young censor had even figured out how to identify unique chakra signatures if he was familiar with the individual, like knowing someone's unique scent. Because of this, Iruka found his skills to be satisfactory, deciding Naruto could ask for further training with whoever ended up being his captain once the academy student was assigned to a genin team. Naruto had been greatly disappointed when his extra lessons came to an end. The lonely boy found the extra time with Iruka after school a weird balance between pleasing and frustrating. Iruka pushed him, challenging the normally unfocused youth. At times, even rewarding Naruto when he made noticeable progress, usually with as much ramen as the growing boy could fill his stomach with at Ichiraku's. Being acknowledged for his efforts and hard work was becoming addictive to Naruto. The energetic blonde probably would have performed better in the regular classroom setting just to earn Iruka's praise, if it weren't Sasuke constantly getting under his skin. Granted, the Uchiha had calmed down somewhat since the incident that occurred almost 4 years ago. Even so, he still took pleasure in showing Naruto up, forcing the younger boy to remain at the bottom of the class. Ever since Naruto made it his goal to try embarrassing or surpassing the older boy in front of the class. However, being the short-sighted klutz he was, Naruto's efforts tended to end up backfiring or earning the ire of Sasuke's ever-growing and ever-aggressive fan base. The girls in question had become even more vicious in the new year, Naruto noticed. Some had even been bold enough to try asking the Uchiha out on dates. Of course, Sasuke always turned them down. In another life, Naruto would probably have been jealous of the attention Sasuke was receiving from the girls. Now though, even with Naruto starting to notice how pretty the girls were becoming, he could also vaguely sense their intentions, making his skin crawl. Sure, once they were genin they'd be technically considered adults, but that didn't account for much when half the class hadn't even started puberty yet, himself included. Naruto had asked Iruka about this new feeling he'd sensed. Needless to say, getting the talk from his sensei was eye-opening, embarrassing, and horrifying. On one hand, Naruto learned how effective his Oiroku no Jutsu truly was on the male populace, and considered exploring an alternative variant targeting the female population once he was more experienced. On the other hand, Naruto had become utterly disgusted and resolved to abhor perverts. It was one thing to practice and design a jutsu to be used as a distraction for more powerful opponents. It was quite another to take advantage of or disrespect the sanctity of the kunoichi population. These new revelations had caused an internal struggle within the budding Uzumaki. As his friendship with Hinata grew, Naruto found himself craving her attention more and more, but in a different way than with Irika. The enamored youth would imagine holding her hand or hugging her, not that he ever acted on these impulses. After an incident where Hinata had fainted, Naruto recalled being completely freaked out, thinking he'd killed the poor girl. It was only through Irika's reassurances that he managed to calm down. Ever since the confused boy became afraid of engaging in any form of physical contact with his friend, instead, the soon-to-be preteen found joy trying to show off around the Hyuga heiress. Naruto wanted her to see him as a cool and capable ninja. Granted, most of the time he tried to show off, it usually ended with the rest of the class laughing at him, Irika-sensei disciplining him, hurting himself, being hurt by someone else, or a combination of all four. Naruto felt the risk was worth it just to see Hinata smile and laugh. The reservedly shy girl rarely showed such honest emotions, unfortunately. However, Hinata couldn't hide her true self from him, even if she wasn't entirely aware of it. For all the skill Naruto was putting into tuning out everyone's emotions, including his own, it seemed he preferred to intently fixate on Hinata's. The full nature of Naruto's sensor abilities were one of the few remaining secrets he kept from Hinata. Now mostly out of awkward embarrassment, more than anything else. For instance, it seemed at the start of every new year Hinata would be consistently sullen until she'd catch sight of Naruto. The Hyuga heiress never went into much detail about why she would become depressed every spring. Usually, the timid girl would go into a vague self-deprecating tangent, questioning her capabilities as a ninja, and never directly answering Naruto's inquiries. It was in these moments Naruto felt his most motivated. It was like, as Irika would have put it, his will of fire would spark into a roaring inferno. He might not understand what was wrong but knew that he had the power to make her smile, usually by pulling a prank or practical joke. It became such a pattern that even a few of the other students come to anticipate Naruto's more crazy stunts within the first week of school every year. Being the avid prankster Naruto was, he aimed not to disappoint. To set the mood this year for his peers, the impish child had set up paint bombs that turned Irika-sensei and Mizuki-sensei into tie-dye walking works of art, accented with glitter. Sure, Naruto had detention for a month, but it was worth it. After all, Hinata's high perceptive skills had been able to notice the choice of pigment combinations as the duo's favorite colors. Not all of the first semester had been sunshine and sakura blossoms. Unfortunately, it seemed that a few of the guys had been put off by Hinata giving Naruto homemade chocolate in February just before the end of year break. At the start of the new school year, to be polite and a good friend, Naruto returned the favor by bestowing her with a customized kunai. The blade itself was just one from Naruto's personal set he'd purchased in preparation for their final year's shuriken jutsu training. The clever ninja trainee merely modified it with lavender and gold ribbons braided on the grip. They were soon to be ninja, after all, so Naruto wanted to give Hinata something functional, and not too flashy. This hadn't gone over well with some of the more hormone-driven male cadets. Thus, one day after school Naruto found himself cornered by some of the boys, where they proceeded to demand he learn his place. After all, he was a nameless nobody while Hinata was the heiress of the esteemed Hyuga clan. Naruto didn't care much about the insults, since in his mind clan standing didn't make a person. Especially considering he was the sole surviving Uzumaki in Konoha, a clan whose crest could be seen on every chunin vest and standard issue Konohagakure shinobi uniform, yet Naruto as an individual was considered insignificant. Yes, Hinata was a ninja princess of sorts, but to Naruto that wasn't what made her special. He'd still call her Haim-sama now and again, but only when he was sure people weren't eavesdropping on them. It was fun to tease her once in a while, and it gave him a warm fuzzy feeling that he found enthralling. This brought Naruto's thoughts to this morning. Their first semester was going to be ending in a couple of days, and they'd be released for a month to enjoy summer. This meant that they were going to be tested on their skills in genjutsu, specifically being able to successfully recognize, cast, and dispel an E-rank genjutsu, on top of a written exam evaluating their general knowledge of chakra theory and basic shinobi knowledge. This year ultimately wasn't about learning new skills involving academics. It was about honing what they already knew, preparing the students for their lives as active duty ninjas serving the village. At the current moment, Naruto could care less about any of that. He was completely expecting to utterly fail the genjutsu exam, and written exams weren't one of his strengths. No, right now a certain indigo-haired girl occupied his mind. Naruto would have to spend another summer without her, followed by some festivals in fall and winter. Graduation would be here before they knew it. Would they still even be able to see each other once they became full-fledged shinobi? Hinata, rarely if ever, left her clan compound without being escorted by her insufferable caretaker Ko, and Naruto didn't dare go to the prestigious residence. He was one for pushing the boundaries, maybe at times testing his limits with others, but even he wasn't that stupid. The ostracized youth didn't want to cause unnecessary problems for Hinata. So, Naruto decided to keep his distance until he could start changing the village's opinion of himself. What would happen if the dead last didn't graduate alongside his classmates? The thought sent a chill down Naruto's spine, made his stomach hurt, and his heart rate quicken. If he failed every graduation exam he'd be held back. If Naruto was held back, he'd become the oldest kid in class, and not know any of his peers. People would take him less seriously than they already did. It'd be akin to a death sentence for his shinobi career. It was extremely hard to climb out of a hole that deep. No! I have to quit thinking like that. I will graduate. I will become a shinobi. I will become Hokage. Naruto mentally berated himself before his gaze and thoughts gravitated towards Hinata once more. This whole week had been a self-study session in preparation for the first exam. The blonde was confident he could pass the written part. Well, as long as he remained focused. Once Naruto started applying the lessons taught to him with practical examples taken from his personal experiences, it became easier to understand and retain the information. Genjutsu, on the other hand, how was he going to pass? He didn't have the talent, let alone the control, for making or dispelling the nasty jutsu. Naruto could have sworn Mizuki-sensei was making the evaluations impassable on purpose, but he couldn't prove it. At the same time, the suspicious boy wanted to give his assistant instructor the benefit of the doubt. Just because Mizuki-sensei gave off a bad vibe most all the time didn't necessarily mean he was a bad guy per se. The Chunin had after all been friends with Irika-sensei for years. Sure, the ill-felt sensations meant Mizuki-sensei hated Naruto for some reason, but so did 80% of the village. Ayanu, Naruto-kun? Called a hushed but sweet voice. Turning, the once distracted blonde gave Hinata his full attention. Once they locked eyes, she was quick to avert her gaze, fidgeting nervously. It always made Naruto sad and disappointed that she was so timid. Worse, it seemed like her low self-esteem had been increasing with each passing year. He hoped it didn't become a detriment to her career as a kunoichi. Naruto tried to counteract Hinata's lack of self-confidence by showering her with compliments and his best smiles, but sometimes it felt like an uphill battle. What's up, Hinata-chan? I just wanted to let you know that Irika-sensei was releasing us for lunch. I presume you didn't hear him. Also, Ito, I was wondering. Hinata trailed off, looking down, shuffling her feet under the shared space of their desk. Naruto just smiled softly, resting his chin in his hand with his elbow propped against the surface for support. His steady azure gaze patiently studying her. As much as Naruto found her timidness heartbreaking, he also had been progressively finding her nervous tics adorable and endearing. Taking a breath to collect herself, Hinata stilled her nervous body before she continued, would you like to share my bento with me? I accidentally made too much, she finally mumbled, her cheeks gaining a faint blush. Liar, Naruto thought with a chuckle before deciding to play along with the game. His smile widening into his iconic fox-like grin. Well, that was a silly thing to do to Bayo. Sure, I don't mind helping you eat it, Hinata-chan. After all, we can't waste food. Dada Bayo. Hinata smiled gently, the warmth of her appreciation and happiness washing over Naruto like a summer breeze. He watched Hinata reach into her bag to pull out the cloth-wrapped container that held the handmade lunch. Taking that as his cue, the whisker-faced blonde leisurely stood, heading for the door, the dark-haired girl tailing an unassumingly healthy distance behind. After the fiasco at the start of the semester, the two friends decided to handle their friendship with a bit more care. Naruto personally could care less about what people thought, but Hinata was adamant that she didn't want a shunned orphan to be more troubled than he already was. It had become a fun game, Naruto had to admit, at least after he'd gotten used to it. Hinata would pretend to tail him, and he'd act oblivious of her presence. It kept them safe from judgment, and their friendship free of unnecessary drama. The only person who seemed perceptive of their gambit was Shikamaru, but like with many things, the lackadaisical boy found the whole thing not of his interest. Using the skills they'd been honing in the academy, Naruto and Hinata made their way deftly to the roof to enjoy their shared lunch. Naruto fought back the urge to laugh when Hinata revealed the bento's contents. Every time the girl seemed to make too much food, for some reason there was always onigiri that looked like his face, with tamago for hair and cucumber for goggles. It was really cute if a bit weird. Grabbing one of the quirky morsels, Naruto allowed himself a generous bite. He hummed with excited delight as the flavor danced on his tongue. The elated boy quickly finished off the remnants of his current portion before hurriedly grabbing another of the personalized rice balls to savor. Naruto could never get used to Hinata's bento dishes. Every time he'd been lucky enough to indulge, it seemed like her skills had improved, or she learned something new. Naruto was averse to admit, but Hinata was so far the only one to successfully get him to enjoy raw vegetables. He didn't know what special jutsu she utilized to erase the normally gross bitter flavor, but one of these days he'd get her to reveal her secrets. Man, Hinaheim, you're going to make a hell of a wife one day, the innocent blonde proclaimed with absolute bliss between mouthfuls. In response, Hinata faltered with her actions, her eyes wide and face as red as Naruto's clan badge stitched to his jacket. This, on top of the sudden unrecognizable emotions coursing off of Hinata, caused Naruto to pause and reflect. Sure, Mata, why did I say that? And worse, out loud. She probably thinks I'm being weird. Stupid. 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 I mean, Ito, well, you know. You're so good at cooking. Databeo. You'll also be a badass kunoichi. Naruto rambled awkwardly, trailing off as Hinata's blush deepened into the fringes of the purple danger zone. He could now feel his own face heating up, leaving the duo in uncomfortable silence while they finished their meal. Anyway, we should probably start to head back. I'll go on ahead. See you in class, Hinata-chan. The flustered boy finally exclaimed, quickly getting up to leave. Naruto observed as Hinata nodded in recognition, though her thoughts seemed elsewhere. Sighing, the orange-clad ninja shook his head, silently berating himself as he made his way back to the classroom. Once there, Naruto's large blue eyes locked onto the familiar Naro and Akimichi pair. He smiled cheekily, giving them a friendly wave before heading up to his seat. Naruto, of course, was still on friendly terms with the other boys, but they didn't hang out as much nowadays. This wasn't due to anything bad. Naruto just liked spending as much of his free time at school with Hinata. Shikamaru and Choji never asked, and he wasn't forthcoming. The other two boys were nice, but sometimes Naruto felt like the third wheel with their close friendship. The clan heirs were also starting to take their studies a bit more seriously this year, so it wasn't like they had time to hang out with Naruto anymore anyway. Granted, to an outsider that didn't seem to be the case. However, the Uzumaki wasn't fooled by Shikamaru's aloofness. The usually lethargic youth was more alert during Irika's instruction, even expressing irritation occasionally if Naruto acted up in class. Naruto wished he could sympathize, but in reality, he didn't know what it felt like to have such high expectations set upon oneself. Thinking about it, the whisker-faced youth was more confused as to why Hinata wasn't acting similarly. With the first of the graduation exams coming up, she still made time to talk with him in the mornings and during lunch. Remembering the delicious meal, Naruto pondered how much time Hinata would have to set aside in the mornings, not only to get to school early but also to make a bento big enough for both of them to enjoy during lunch. It was easy for Naruto to get to the academy promptly. He lived within spitting distance of the Hokage compound. Hinata, on the other hand, lived across the village. The more he thought about it, the more guilty Naruto felt. He wished the girl's family wasn't so fiercely protective of their precious heir. If the scorned orphan had been allowed to hang out with Hinata outside of school, he'd have been willing to get up extra early every morning, just so that he could accompany the compassionate girl on the daily trek to the academy, especially if it meant indulging in more of her delicious cooking. One of these days, I'm definitely gonna need to convince Hinata-chan to tell me the secret for making vegetables taste so good. Tebeo, just as Naruto predicted, he'd failed the graduation exam for Genjutsu but managed halfway decent marks in the written exam. The resigned shinobi in training felt a little disappointed but unsurprised. If anything, Naruto felt more embarrassed that he'd spent the majority of the afternoon in a Genjutsu-induced, drooling stupor. At least it had been a good nap. The determined youth decided during the summer break to focus more of his efforts on training for the next exam. Naruto was on the fence about the Taijutsu and Shurikenjutsu exams that were to be held at the beginning of winter. The apprehensive ninja cadet knew he was decent with both skill sets, but the problem was the Taijutsu evaluation. It was always a spar with another student, and to his understanding, you either passed or you failed. Even though Naruto would be 12 by that time, he just wasn't confident that he'd be receiving a miraculous growth spurt before that time. The prepubescent youth still lacked the physical reach and power to overtake most of the boys. His only hope was to spar Shikamaru, else since the Nara usually gave up before the match even began. There were few people Naruto prayed to all the known kami that he didn't get matched against, the top of the list being Uchiha Sasuke, for obvious reasons. Naruto in all his time at the academy had not won a single match against a more popular and talented boy, and didn't enjoy being embarrassed by a quick loss from him either. Returning from summer break, Naruto felt a bit more confident in himself with all the training he'd put in, at least until he walked into his designated classroom. Naruto's heart sank as he made his way past his fellow trainees. It seemed almost everyone gained a growth spurt over break, except him. Refusing to react to the jabs of the more smug classmates, Naruto pushed through the congregation, feeling his mood sour. The jealous youth seethed with envy, glaring heatedly in particular at the male populace as he made his way up to his usual seat. Once situated, Naruto outwardly sulked, struggling with the twisted feeling in his gut. Chikushu. There's no way I'm going to pass the Taijutsu evaluation. Tebeo. I'm probably the shortest kid in class now. Ayana, Naruto-kun, are you alright? Hearing the familiar voice of the shy and timid Hinata, Naruto was pulled from his angry stewing momentarily, pausing to look up at the familiar indigo-haired girl, before groaning and letting his head fall to rest soundly on the desk in defeat. Scratch that. I'm definitely the shortest kid in class now. Not you too, Hinata-chan. It's not fair. Databeo. He whined, flailing about dejectedly, causing the girl to become confused as she calmly took her seat next to him. Her large pearlescent eyes alert with concern. What do you mean? Itu, what's unfair, Naruto-kun? Everyone's taller than me now. Databeo. This sucks. Even you've betrayed me, Hinata-chan, eh? I am sorry, Naruto-kun. Naruto stopped his self-pitying tantrum when he caught Hinata's hurt tone of voice. She sincerely seemed remorseful and sad over something that was out of either child's control. Naruto frowned to himself, feeling ashamed that he let his insecurities upset the kind girl. It's okay, Hinata-chan, I am sorry. To the apologetic, yet still frustrated, The boy muttered quickly, looking away as a faint blush painted his cheeks. Anu, and Naruto-kun, why you grow too? The quiet girl kindly offered weakly, causing Naruto to smile wistfully. Of course, I know I'll grow eventually, just probably not in time for the next graduation exam. I swear if I hear one more person call me Chibiruto or Naruchan, they're dead. To Bayo, as if by some self-fulfilling prophecy, Naruto failed the taijutsu evaluation. He didn't know if his partner had been some cruel joke, but the miserable Uzumaki had been less than thrilled with being matched up against Uchiha Sasuke. At least the match had been swift and merciful, even if it crushed what was left of Naruto's pride that year. Many months had now come to pass, and it was currently the week of the final graduation exam. This was Naruto's last chance to graduate with his peers. If he failed this time, he'd be held back, put in with a class of trainees he didn't know, become the oldest among his peers, probably lose Iruka as his sensei, and to top it off, it'd probably be seen as a black mark for his shinobi career. The pressure was getting to Naruto. As the date loomed closer, so too did his anxieties rise. He tried to put on a brave front around his classmates, but was all too aware of his glaring weaknesses. Sure, Naruto could perform a henge flawlessly, and a passable kawarimi, but throughout his whole time in the academy he'd never been able to perform a successful bunshin. The jutsu was a curse for him, and that meant there was a 1/3 chance Naruto would fail to graduate. The desperate youth worked tirelessly on his chakra control, but couldn't get it low enough to create a passable illusionary doppelganger. His bunshin was always overloaded by too much chakra, or not enough chakra had been used to execute the technique. Naruto half wished he could get a waiver since his clan were notably infamous for their large chakra reserves, but thought better than to ask for special treatment. This technique was paramount to a ninja's survival in the field after all. Running a hand through his hair in a self-soothing motion, Naruto found himself forcefully pulled from his thoughts as Hinata entered the classroom. Her posture was bowed, her gaze never leaving the floor as she moved, and her presence. Why does Hinata-chan seem so broken? Naruto asked himself warily, not daring to make a sound, watching as the girl slowly made her way up to sit next to him. The emotions radiating off his friend made Naruto feel small, lost, and utterly defeated. It reminded him of his first year in the academy when he was close to dropping out. Hinata-chan, are you alright? Naruto asked discreetly with a bit of hesitance, feeling uncomfortable with the sensations permeating onto his person. The bewildered sensor's only answer was a sniffle followed by a choking sob that the distraught girl tried unsuccessfully to muffle. Tears started to fill the overwhelmed empatha's own blue eyes. Naruto had never seen Hinata like this. Yes, he'd seen her cry, yes, he'd seen her sad, but this, it was almost like her whole world had been destroyed. What could have caused Hinata-chan to end up like this? Biting his inner cheek to regain focus, Naruto resolved to do something he never thought he'd need to. Closing his eyes, he put his specialized training to use, working to carefully separate the distraught girl's emotions from his own. Naruto knew he wouldn't be of any help to Hinata if he couldn't think clearly. Once Naruto was again in control of himself, he reached over, gulping as he solidified his resolve, he tenderly grasping Hinata's hand to provide her an anchor. This earned the determined boy a gasp of surprise as the demoralized girl snapped her head up, looking at Naruto with puffy reddened eyes. It seemed Hinata had been crying for a while. This only made Naruto more determined in his objective as he returned her gaze intently, his deep blue eyes conveying his sincerity. Don't know what happened to you, but Hinata-chan, I'd like to help if you'll let me. You don't have to tell me anything right now, but when Iruka-sensei releases us for lunch, I'd like it if you shared your pain with me. I'm always here for you, Hinaheim. Dadabayo. Naruto asserted in a whisper with a resolute look and steady voice, causing Hinata to blush furiously. This in turn brought out a cheeky chuckle from the boy as he flashed a bright smile. Now that the issue had been temporarily resolved, Naruto decided it was time to let go of Hinata's hand, only to be caught by surprise as the normally shy girl grabbed back onto it like a lifeline. Please, I promise to tell you what happened. For now, please let me stay like this, please, Hinata pleaded weakly, averting her gaze again. Naruto was completely taken aback by the normally shy girl's brazenness, only managing to stare at her dumbly. After a long pause, he nodded slowly, turning to absently look out the window, resting his chin on his free hand. And so, throughout the morning period, the pair sat with their hands entwined under the desk. Amid normal circumstances, Naruto would have been elated to be holding Hinata's hand. It was something he longed for all year, but this was not one of those times. This felt different. It wasn't a victory to relish, this time he was just trying to offer her support and reassurance. Whatever had happened must have been seriously bad for Hinata to be so bold. The normally timid girl hadn't even been fazed when Naruto used her teasing nickname. Once Iruka dismissed the class for lunch, Naruto dashed off for the roof. It was the only place the duo ever received any privacy, and Naruto was confident that Hinata would join him when she was ready. Making himself comfortable under a blossoming tree, the apprehensive preteen waited patiently for Hinata to show up. At times Naruto hated playing the fool with his peers, but had been in the habit for so long that he felt no reason to act differently. It wasn't like it mattered when they all graduated anyway. Today, though, the troubled preteen wanted nothing more than to comfort Hinata to the best of his abilities. It wasn't long before Naruto was cut from his musing as he was joined by a still dejected Hinata. Once she'd made herself comfortable, Naruto leaned back absently, looking up into the trees before casting a sidelong glance. "So, you gonna tell me what this morning was all about?" Naruto finally asked, concern evident on his face as he stared intently at his most precious friend. To Hinata struggled to start before trailing off as her words were strangled by another sniffle. Naruto, for his part, just sighed uncomfortably. He didn't know what to do in these situations. The socially awkward orphan knew what he wanted to do. However, Naruto didn't know what was appropriate to do, and so he was at a loss. On one hand, he wanted to wrap his arms around her and tell her everything was going to be okay. On the other hand, Hinata would faint any time Naruto unexpectedly invaded her personal space, and then he wouldn't be able to find out what caused her to be in this state to begin with. Absent-mindedly, Naruto rubbed the back of his neck before deciding on a happy medium. Closing his eyes, the orange-clad trainee leaned his body lazily, just until his shoulder gently bumped with Hinata's, while simultaneously grasping his crossed ankles with his hands to keep from acting on any further impulses. At the action, Naruto felt Hinata stiffen momentarily before relaxing. Patiently, the blonde remained passively silent, allowing the distraught girl to continue the discussion at her own pace. "Why, yesterday, I was called before our father and some of the clan elders. They wanted me to spar with my little sister to defend my claim as the future head of the Hyuga. During the spar I couldn't bring myself to Hinata trailed off once more as she struggled to collect herself." Naruto slowly reopened his eyes to look down at his hands, sympathizing with his friend as he continued to listen. He didn't comprehend much about the issue but remembered Hinata mentioning her little sister on occasion. From what he gathered, the girl was about 5 years younger than Hinata and had been growing quite cold to her over the past year or so. Still, to make Hinata spar against someone who wasn't even in the academy yet. Stupid Hyuga, how cruel can you get, pitting siblings against one another? Tebeo, anyway, as of now, I'm the heir in name only. In the eyes of the Hyuga clan, Hanabi is the recognized future head, while I'm nothing more than a disappointment, a weak failure." Hinata finished, letting her renewed tears fall once more. Naruto growled, turning to look at the self-deprecating girl, his grip tightening around his legs. "You're not weak, Databeo," he snapped, causing the girl to flinch momentarily. Naruto was slowly starting to piece together the cause of Hinata's timid nature. Opting to use a softer tone, he continued, "I mean, I don't completely get it, but to me, it sounds like you care more about not hurting your precious little sister instead of satisfying some dumb request from your clan. That makes you strong in my book. If they don't see it, just prove them wrong." Tebeo, huffing with repressed anger, Naruto stood up purposefully as he cupped his hands around his mouth. "I'm Uzumaki Naruto. I'm going to be the future Hokage to surpass all previous Hokage. Tebeo. I believe kindness is the best strength. Stronger than any jutsu. Databeo." He shouted with conviction before turning back to smile at a flabbergasted Hinata. The cheeky boy chuckled as he crossed his arms and cocked his head to the side. "Don't sweat the small stuff, Hinaheim. You'll become a kick-ass kunoichi, and will always have the support of Konoha's future badass Hokage. It's a promise." Databeo. "Yeah, no need to sweat the small stuff. So what if I suck at the Bunshin no Jutsu? I'll pass that stupid exam and work my way to the top." Mentally berating himself for his previous lack of self-confidence, Naruto was only partially aware of how flustered Hinata had become. Her gaze seemed unfocused, her complexion a vibrant vermilion. Leaning forward, Naruto bent down to feel her forehead. He hoped she wasn't coming down with something, with their most important exam happening in just a few days. "No, are you okay, Hinata-chan?" As soon as Naruto's hand made contact with her forehead, the girl's body relaxed, slumping down in an awkward position. Naruto sighed, slapping his forehead admonishingly with his other hand. He'd been so careful and still ended up causing Hinata to faint. Hesitantly, the exasperated boy allowed his senses to reach out, once again meeting with the renewed warmth of the unconscious girl. Naruto didn't know what to do with Hinata or her familial predicament, but at least he succeeded in making her smile for the time being. At this, a sudden thought occurred to Naruto. He probably wasn't the only student stressed out about the final exam, not to mention this was their last year, hopefully at least, in the academy. Shouldn't he send them off with one last hurrah, a prank to end all pranks? As the plan formulated in the devious youth's mind, a fox-like grin grew on his whisker-striped face. "Oh, this is gonna be good," Tebeo. When Iruka had been preparing to start class that morning, of course he'd suspected something was up. All the signs were there. First, Naruto had been spacing out for the past few days, and seemed suspiciously happy about something. The Uzumaki brat may be energetic, and quick to smile, but he was rarely if ever truly happy about something. That is, unless it gave Iruka a headache. Second, the notorious blonde wasn't in class when Iruka entered the room today. Normally, Naruto would show up early to interact with Hinata for as long as possible. The young instructor suspected that the pair may have possessed a mutual crush on each other, but couldn't be too sure given how oblivious Naruto always seemed to be. Third, the familiar sight of a breathless shinobi bursting into the classroom, causing the instructor to let out a tired groan. "Iruka! Quick! It's Naruto!" This time he's defacing the Hokage monument. Pinching the bridge of his scarred nose, the Chunin could feel his head already starting to throb. It was no secret that the Yumino seemed to have a talent for catching Naruto, and reeling his destructive energy back in when the prankster was prone to acting up. This didn't mean it was easy to accomplish, it was honestly quite taxing on the academy instructor. Iruka was sure that he'd be sporting gray hair and wrinkles before he was 30 if Naruto had any say about it. Alright class. I'll be back as soon as I can. This is your last day before the graduation exam. Take this time to review your ninjutsu until I return. Iruka announced with a dismissive, if not slightly irked, sigh as he made his way out into the hall. Just as the frustrated instructor was in the process of closing the door, he caught some remarks about the misunderstood Uzumaki that had him shaking with repressed anger. That Naruto baka. He's so selfish. Why did he have to pick such an important day to act up? If I did half the things he did, I'd be grounded for life. He doesn't even realize how lucky he is to not have parents, that loser. Growled a familiar female voice, followed by a chorus of half-assed chiding giggles, much to Iruka's disappointment. Putting his thoughts aside, Iruka quickly made his way to the roof. Once there, he could feel his growing headache intensify. Making his way through the crowd, the young adult took in the sight of the whole carved face of the mountain painted in bright acrylics, graffiti ranging from insults to simplistically immature drawings. Well, at least he's using a safety harness this time, Iruka thought absent-mindedly, approaching the safety railing while tuning out the insults Naruto hurled down to the other shinobi. The instructor noted that the elderly Hokage himself didn't seem at all fazed and was watching patiently at the front of the crowd. At least until Naruto proceeded to give the congregation of shinobi a double helping of the single-finger salute, causing his embarrassed instructor to facepalm. That brat, I think he's finally lost it this time. Hokage-sama, I can't apologize enough. Iruka started in what felt like a well-rehearsed script with how many times he'd done it. The young punk was completely ignorant of the suffering he brought down on his teacher. Iruka wasn't sure if this was what it felt like to have a son of his own. Nevertheless, he felt responsible for the wayward youth in his own way. Eh? Is that you, Iruka? Asked the aged Sarutobi, almost appearing bored with the whole ordeal. Stepping up with one foot resting on the railing, Iruka leaned forward to frown up at Naruto, even though on the inside his inner prankster was awestruck at the kid's brazenness. Taking in a deep breath, the instructor launched into his expertly practiced tirade. Naruto! What do you think you're doing? Bakuyaro! Get down from there and get back to class! Iruka shouted, fighting back a smile when Naruto almost jumped out of his skin, flailing around in his harness when he recognized his instructor's voice. Has still got it. Iruka watched as the preteen scrambled around clumsily to flee the scene. How was it that the kid could be skilled enough to deface practically the whole monument without notice, but at the same time be such a klutz? The instructor dismissed the situation temporarily as some of his fellow shinobi gave chase to the mischievous blonde. The experienced Chunin wasn't in a hurry. He already knew most of Naruto's tricks. Rubbing his temples, Iruka turned instead to look over to the Hokage. I apologize again, Sandame-sama. I'll make sure he's properly punished and cleans up his mess after class. The Hokage merely chuckled, waving his hand lazily. I trust you will, as you've always done. Well, that was an energetic way to start my morning. Unfortunately, the paperwork is beckoning me. I must return to my office. Good day, Iruka. With that, the elderly man leisurely strolled away, absently smoking his pipe, pausing just long enough to give the shinobi teacher a small nod. Iruka bowed respectfully in kind before turning to shun Shin away in a swirl of leaves. It was now late into the night, and Naruto was having a hard time going to sleep. Today has been a blast. Sure, Iruka-sensei had chewed him out. Yes, it had taken a couple of hours to wash all the paint off of the monument, but Naruto achieved his goal of revitalizing himself and his classmates for their test tomorrow. Not to mention score some free ramen from Iruka-sensei at Ichiraku's. Any day was a good day if it ended with free ramen from Ichiraku's, at least in Naruto's book. Sighing, the blonde rolled onto his stomach, hugging his pillow as less jovial thoughts drifted into turbulent waters. Tomorrow was the day, either he passed or failed. Naruto's instructor had been very tight-lipped about the exam. The preteen had hoped that his most epic prank of all time would have completely washed away all his anxieties, but they just crept back in. Naruto wanted to be a shinobi so badly. He even asked Iruka if he could wear his hataite over dinner just to know what it felt like. Of course, the stickler had flat out refused, stating they were proof that one was recognized as an adult and a full-fledged shinobi. Naruto would have to earn his like everyone else. Gra. Tebeo. Kyuso. I'm not doing myself any favor staying up this late. The anxious 12-year-old growled out, rolling over once more to glance at his clock. Determined to get some decent shut-eye, Naruto pulled his nightcap over his eyes, forcing all other thoughts out of his mind except to lazily name off all the flavors of instant ramen he was familiar with. Miso teriyaki curry chicken, shio shoyu beef tonkatsu pork spicy shrimp zzz. For your final exam, you must each successfully complete the Bunshin no Jutsu. Please wait here until your name is called, and then come next door. Bunshin? Why the Bunshin no Jutsu? Tebeo. Who am I kidding, Chikushu? Of course, it'd be the Bunshin. It was now the day of the final graduation exam, and Naruto didn't know if Iruka-sensei was picking on him, or if the fates were playing a cruel joke. He'd been matched against Sasuke for his taijutsu exam, and now he was expected to produce an illusionary doppelganger. Something Naruto had never succeeded in. The anxious youth gripped his hair as the minutes ticked by and the classroom slowly emptied of its students. Unfortunately for the Uzumaki, he didn't have to wait long to be called since his surname was close to the top of the list. He waved nervously to Hinata once he'd been summoned, silently appreciating her reassuring nod as he exited the classroom, making his way to the exam room. Naruto gulped, nervously looking around the exam room. Iruka-sensei and Mizuki-sensei were sitting at a table with clipboards. On the table glimmered shiny new Hittite, mocking the nervous boy.